After completing his dark Cold War comedy Dr. Strangelove, filmmaker Stanley Kubrick decided his next movie would be the, quote, proverbial good science fiction movie. Over the next few years, Kubrick slowly, meticulously, and methodically worked on a story with writer Arthur C. Clarke, a huge, ambitious journey through time and space, exploring human evolution, extraterrestrial life, and man's relationship with technology. When 2001: A Space Odyssey was finally released in 1968, the world didn't quite know what to make of it. Some believed it to be a masterpiece, while others were baffled, confounded, and bored by this cold, barren, slow-paced art house film. Over 50 years later, audiences are still divided by 2001, but it's now generally recognised to be not just Kubrick's masterpiece, but one of the greatest and most influential films ever made. The film with which all subsequent movies that deal with space travel, aliens, and the dangers of AI are compared.
Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer.
Join me as we continue exploring the evolution of man-made monsters, and we discuss Stanley Kubrick's magnum opus, 2001: A Space Odyssey. Welcome back to the evolution of horror. My name is Mike Muncer, and as ever, I am your host. In this podcast, we explore and dissect the history and the evolution of the horror genre, one subgenre at a time. We are currently in the middle of our 11th season exploring the evolution of man-made monsters, and this is part 14. In this week's episode, as that intro suggested, it's a big one. We are discussing quite an intimidating movie, Stanley Kubrick's magnum opus, his sci-fi masterpiece, 2001: A Space Odyssey. This will be a spoilerific discussion. We will be discussing all details of this movie from beginning to end. So if you haven't seen the film, what are you doing? You've got to experience it at least once. Go away and watch the film before you listen to our discussion. So joining me to discuss this week's film, I've got a returning guest. He's already been on this season twice, but I couldn't not bring him back for this because he is such an expert when it comes to science fiction films, and 2001: A Space Odyssey is his favourite film of all time, so I had to have him back. A big welcome to Kevin Lyons. Hello, Kev.
Hello, Michael Muncer.
Hello. Lovely to have you back again. I've got you working hard this year, haven't I, between all these different podcasts?
Do you know, I'm really confused what I'm doing today. I mean, I feel like, what am I talking about now?
I know. There was a moment last week when I was talking about Carry On Screaming on evolution of horror, and we were talking about parodying Hammer films, and I was like, it's like my brain was slightly imploding.
I must admit, that I saw the advert come up for Carry On Screaming. I thought, did me and Becky talk about that in relation to Hammer? Just for a second, I was completely thrown. It was very not confusing. Not that I'm complaining. I'm talking about some amazing films. So
exactly. And speaking of, we're about to talk about what I believe is your favourite film of all time. Is that right?
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yes. I love this film and this is something no podcast host wants to hear. I love this film in ways I probably can't explain very well.
Well, I think that's the challenge, isn't it? It's one of those movies that it's quite an intimidating movie in a lot of ways. Like, you kind of, in some ways, you go, where do we even start with unpicking this movie, right? And at the same time, I also feel like there's so much that you sort of can't explain about this movie. You can't explain.
And I don't want to be able to explain.
No.
I think if I can explain it, then a lot of the magic, a lot of what I love about this film goes away.
Right. That's really
interesting. It's that sense of not really getting a grasp on some of it. And I've inflicted this film on several people over the last couple of years. Everything from teenage sons of work colleagues to family members. And I've scored an impressive hit rate so far of absolutely zero.
Oh, really?
Not one of them has liked it. So
that is really interesting. Okay.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah. So it's going to be a very divisive film. And I can hear in my head now family members going, oh, God, is he talking talking about bloody 2001 again? And I can also imagine an awful lot of listeners looking at it thinking, no, it's not for me. Not this
totally.
one. And that's fine. That's absolutely fine.
Absolutely. And I'll also say as a disclaimer, like, this is a movie, I mean, Kev is going to have things to, like, hours and hours worth of stuff to say, potentially, right?
Days, potentially, yeah.
But at the same time, there is still going to be stuff that we miss or that we won't get time to talk about in this movie. So,
of course,
I'm just saying that up front before people write in and go, I'm surprised you didn't mention this about 2000, and I'm surprised you do it. Because, I mean, people have been writing books on this movie for about 50 years as it is, right?
I've got all of them sitting just over here to my left. I've got every single book. And it's also worth noting as well at this point that this is a film, perhaps more than any other that I've spoken with you about, that's open to interpretation.
Yeah, completely.
And I'm going to give my interpretation of what I think this film is about. That may not necessarily be what you interpret it as or anybody else interprets it as. And you know what the beauty of that is? It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
We're all right and we're all wrong
Absolutely.
in equal measure. And it's all down to, this is just one nerd's interpretation of what I think 2001 A Space Odyssey is actually about.
Incredible. Well, there you go. We've got our disclaimers out the way. Let's
dive in now.
Let's get into it. So 2001 A Space Odyssey from 1968. Oh my God, Kev. Maybe this is the hardest question to ask, actually. Summarise the plot of 2001 A Space Odyssey.
Okay, well, days later, he finally stops talking. No, what I'm going to do is we're going to talk about the different sections of the film. Because it's not quite an anthology film, but it's split into separate chapters.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about those as we go along. So I'll enumerate upon the plot as we come to those parts. But essentially, the bare bones, as I see it, is that it's a film about evolution.
Yeah.
About human evolution and about the role that a never identified alien race plays in our evolution.
Right.
And it came out as an interesting time because, in 1967 we had Hammer's Quatermass and the Pit, which is about aliens interfering with human evolution.
Yeah.
We had Planet of the Apes, which was just about evolution.
Yeah.
We had 2001, aliens interfering with evolution. In 1969, Desmond Morris publishes his very controversial book, The Naked Ape, which is about evolution.
Interesting, yeah.
So there was something in the air. Okay, Quatermass and the Pit dates back to the mid-50s in the television programme, and 2001 had been in production for about 4 years by the time it came out. So, the time frame doesn't quite fit, but there was something in the air.
Yeah. Well, I wonder if it's linked to that idea, and we've talked about it a lot together over the years, Kev, that idea of the 60s being such a time of change and enlightenment in a lot of ways. And that idea of, I always think of that Time magazine cover, Is God Dead, right? This
That's
kind
right.
of science kind of almost surpassing religion, and that idea of evolution becoming so prominent, I suppose, as opposed to creationism or anything like that.
And you've got, this bunch of kids who we're going to talk about later on because they saved 2001 in effect, but you've got this bunch of kids with radical new ideas coming along, and they may have been chemically enhanced on occasions, and so their minds are working on a different level to the older people, and so that they're open to all these new ideas, or old ideas that are suddenly getting new interpretations.
Absolutely.
So it was an interesting time, this sort of late 60s little batch of science fiction films and evolution books.
I first discovered this film as a film student, age I think 17 at school. So I was doing A-levels in film, and this was one of the first movies that our teacher was obsessed with this movie too, I think, and he showed us this movie, and I remember being even as a 17-year-old being pretty gobsmacked by this movie. Like I've always absolutely loved it. I'm on the side of love when it comes to the love-hate divide in this movie. I'm a big fan, so we don't have to fall out over that.
This would have been very awkward if you didn't like this film, wouldn't it?
I have a real weakness for all of Kubrick's movies, to be honest.
Me too.
Like there's something about them for me, and I understand they're not for everyone. I understand that some people even think The Shining is slow and boring. For me, all of his films get me on a really visceral way, sort of level, and we'll talk about this as we go as to whether or not this is a horror movie per se, but I always find that Kubrick's movies really unnerve me in a way that and not just his horror movies, not just The Shining, but Eyes Wide Shut I found quite scary. I think parts of Full Metal Jacket are scary. I even think parts of Doctor Strangelove are really scary.
It's about the end of the world, Doctor Strange. It's a comedy about the end of the world. And then you got things like Lolita, which is unsettling in an entirely different way.
Yeah.
So there's something very dark.
Cold
about his
right?
film. Cold
Yeah.
and calculating. And yet, by all accounts, he actually had quite an impish sense of humour.
Right. Yeah, I can believe that. Yeah.
I think part of what we're seeing in these films is his impish sense of humour.
Yeah.
That, you know, he's sort of like, how far can I push them before they break?
Right.
And isn't that going to be funny when they do?
Absolutely. So what is your history? We know that this is your favourite film, Kev. When did that happen? How far back does this relationship with this movie go for you?
Do you know, I was actually going to look it up because I could, if I went on the newspaper archive, I could tell you exactly when I saw it.
Yeah.
I was living on the Isle of Wight and I was about the same age as you, 17. And it was just post Star Wars.
Right. Okay. So sort of late 70s.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So whether the film was specifically reissued or whether it was just around and available.
Yeah.
And so space things had become the big thing. So let's show 2001. I don't know. But I remember seeing it there for the first time. And for about 3 weeks, I really liked Star Wars. And then I saw 2001.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, that's what I want from a science fiction film.
Right.
And I do remember seeing it one afternoon in a cinema in Newport on the Isle of Wight, where I was living at the time. And it was just me in the afternoon matinee. I went in the afternoon matinees. There was never anybody there. The projectionist used to lean out of the little window above me, reel off the list of trailers and ask which ones I wanted to see because there was no one else there. Basically.
That is incredible. So you had basically your own private cinema to watch
Private
this
screening,
film.
yeah, of cinema. That's why I went to the afternoons because no one else was there to annoy me, and I get very annoyed by people in cinemas very easily.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting and watching it, and just at the end of it, I honestly didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I was just like, this is simultaneously absurd because it made no sense to me, and yet profoundly brilliant.
Wow.
I've never been a religious person, but I wonder if maybe I came as close to a religious conversion that day watching this film and thinking there is something bigger than us. That's incredible. And I've been obsessed with it ever since. Before lockdown happened, when I used to go to the cinema a lot more, every time it screened in London, be it at the BFI South Bank, at the Prince Charles, wherever, I would go and see it.
Yeah.
Every single time, sometimes 2 or 3 times a week. Because I'm just that obsessed with the film. I haven't been to see it on the big screen for a while now, and I'm sort of missing that experience. So,
well, do you know what? It's so interesting, actually. It's one of the few films I would recommend to everyone, not just seeing, but seeing on the big screen if you can. Like, you really do get something else out of it. I can remember seeing it in the cinema. I think it was the BFI as well, probably about 10, 15 years ago, and it something unlocked in it even more for me.
Sure.
You know, like I was able to appreciate it on an entirely new level again. And I do think this movie, and actually I looked it up before recording. It's on almost every week at the Prince Charles in London at the moment. They're playing it on 70mm.
Yeah. And the last time I saw it on the big screen, and maybe this is why I haven't been back, because how could I top this? I saw it at the IMAX.
Oh, yeah.
And just seeing that scene. We all know what scene I mean. Or just seeing that scene on an IMAX screen, and it's just like the sound is pinning you into your seat. You're getting this incredible light show. It's like
incredible.
It's like, I can quite understand, we'll talk about this later, and I can quite understand why the hippies were turning up in their droves and getting stoned and sitting and watching this film, because it is like a sort of, it's cheaper than drugs and it is safer. And it is sort of a really, really extraordinary experience. So I would definitely recommend. My romance with cinema has declined somewhat with age.
Yeah.
Now, I don't enjoy the cinema going process. This one, the one film that I would urge everybody to see at least once in their life on the big screen.
I would completely agree with you. It is really worth it. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? And we'll talk about this so much as we go, but it is more experiential than it is about telling a conventional plot narrative, isn't it?
There is a story that runs through it, but in some ways you kind of get more out of it if you don't worry too much about the story.
Yeah.
You either don't worry about it too much or really go and do things, something that I would really sort of dislike about other films, and that's to go and look at other sources.
Right.
So read the novel, which was written at the same time as the screenplay, but fleshes out the story. Watch the sequel film. We'll talk about that later on, because all of these things add extra layers to the film. And then normally I would say, no, a film has to stand on its own right, on its own 2 feet. You can't go elsewhere for extra information. But in this case, it really enhances it. So either do that or just don't worry about the story at all. and just feel it, man. Just feel it.
Just
feel
it. Exactly. What about talking about this in the context of a horror podcast, Kev? Do you think that this includes, obviously this is a sci-fi film predominantly, but is there horror here in your opinion?
Absolutely. I've long maintained that it's as much a horror film as a science fiction film. And not just because of the murderous actions of HAL 9000, the computer that plays a huge part in the thing, but also that feeling. And I didn't get this again until I saw Alien. And I don't think I got it again until I saw Interstellar. That sense of being so isolated from everybody. Space was terrifying.
Yeah.
I grew up as a child of the space age, and it was all romanticised, and I wanted to be an astronaut. Astronauts were my heroes. Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin. I idolised them more than I idolised footballers as a kid, because they were my favourite people.
Yeah.
But you see a film like this, or Alien, or Interstellar, and you realise that space is so horrifyingly inhospitable.
Absolutely.
Really scary. This idea, sort of in his song Space Oddity, David Bowie sings, "Here I am sitting floating in a tin can."
That's right. Yeah.
And that's what the sense you get here, that the Discovery, the spaceship, the core of this film, is a huge tin can.
Right.
And there's a very thin wall dividing these poor astronauts and the void.
Yes.
This endless void. Yeah. And if you stop and think about that, maybe that's why I suffer insomnia, because maybe I just think about that subconsciously all the time, having seen this film, this horror of being in space.
Completely. And again, it's one of those movies that, in the context of this podcast, you could put in so many different categories, because it is in a way a kind of cosmic horror as much as it is,
it is. This idea of being manipulated.
Yeah.
We're being manipulated by forces we can't even begin to comprehend.
Right.
They sort of lean in from outer space and don't just affect us individually, but affect us as a species.
Right. Exactly.
For better or for worse, So,
yeah.
There's definitely horror running all the way through this. It's not gothic horror. It's not slasher horror.
No.
Hal might be seen as a slasher antagonist, but he's not really. He's a misunderstood genius, is Hal. We'll talk about him later on.
Excellent. I like that. We'll get to that. Yeah, we'll get to that.
But yeah, there's definitely horror. It definitely belongs here.
Love that. So let's talk a little bit in terms of the background of where we're at in 1968 first. Where was science... Obviously, this is such a groundbreaking movie in science fiction. What was the state of science fiction pre-2001?
Well, the 50s has obviously been a big, big time for science fiction, particularly in American cinema. We'd had all those great films, Today the Earth Stood Still, War of the Worlds, This Island Earth, all the great classics that we all love now. And I think I mentioned these perhaps in the introduction episode of this season, that they became increasingly puerile and childish.
Right.
They became much more aimed at the drive-in as sort of temporary distractions to whatever the teenagers were doing in the back seats of the cars.
Yes.
They weren't deep films, they weren't meaningful films, because that's not what these kids wanted. They wanted a minor distraction here and there. And by the 60s, that's kind of where it had gone. There were some great genre films during the decade, and interestingly, an awful lot of them came from Britain.
Yeah.
We had things like, Fahrenheit 451.
Yeah.
Which is a terrific film. There's the American film Seconds, which if you haven't seen...
Oh, my God. Well,
seriously.
We covered on the podcast last week, in fact. So there you go.
Right,
Perfect.
there you go. So, then now is a great excuse to double bill Seconds and 2001, because they are both classic science fiction films. Fahrenheit 451 was British, as indeed is 2001. It was made by the British wing of MGM.
Yeah.
But there was also Village of the Damned in 1960. You got The Day the Earth Caught Fire a year later. Hammer got in on the act with The Damned in 1962. And there was a great film called Invasion in 1966 with Edward Judd. But for every one of those, you're going to get at least a couple of films like Monster a Go-Go, The Beast of Yucca Flats, Santa Claus Conquers the Bloody Martians, The Slime People, Invasion of the Star Creatures. The list, unfortunately, is endless. And as one wit once said, the end is listless.
Yeah.
Because, once you've watched a few of those, you are thinking, what is the attraction of science fiction cinema, really, So the world was crying out for something intelligent.
Yeah, something for grown-ups.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what Stanley Kubrick, and let us not forget Arthur C. Clarke. We must talk about this film as Kubrick and Clarke's 2001, because they worked as a real partnership throughout this. they came up and delivered the goods like you wouldn't believe.
Love that. Well, let's talk about Arthur C. Clarke then briefly before we get into Kubrick. You know, how much was Arthur C. Clarke kind of vital to the creation of this film?
Essential. He was one of the great science fiction writers of his age.
Right, yeah.
In fact, by the time that Kubrick approached him, Kubrick had made Dr. Strangelove prior to this, which again is a science fiction film.
It is.
It's a science fiction film about nuclear war, which fits very nicely with the theme of this series. And Kubrick had come up with this idea that he wanted to make the famous quote, the proverbially good science fiction film.
Yeah.
And so he thought, if I'm going to do that, I'm going to go to a science fiction writer. And at this point, Kubrick was living in Britain. He'd been in Britain since 1961. And he thought, well, who's the best British science fiction writer currently at the moment? Arthur C. Clarke. And Arthur C. Clarke was often referred to as one of the big three of literary science fiction, with Robert Heinlein, who gave us Starship Troopers, and Isaac Asimov, who would give us Foundation, iRobot, and so much other good stuff. But Clarke was primarily a scientist. That was how he started out. In fact, he way back in 1945, he'd proposed this notion of a satellite communications system using geostationary orbits.
Ooh, okay.
Something we are now using as we record this very podcast.
Right, yeah.
So here we are, 1945 to 2025. I can't do maths. You work it out. That should be a nice, easy one. But here we are all these years later. We're using his principles and ideas to talk about him. So he was primarily a scientist, but he started writing science fiction. And he had quite an optimistic view of the future of the human race, which I think clashed a little bit with Kubrick. But then, it's that genius sometimes, isn't it? You get two opposing forces.
Absolutely.
And out of that, you get something really quite incredible. Evolution was quite a big deal for Clarke. He'd written a fantastic novel in 1953 called Childhood's End. Do not worry about the awful television programme that they did of it. Read the book. It's extraordinary, absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And Childhood's End, in a way, kind of would have been a good subtitle for 2001, which we'll get to as we go through it.
Yeah.
But, he started writing this novel. When Kubrick approached him, he started to write this novel based on a short story of his called The Sentinel.
Right, yeah.
And in The Sentinel, a group of explorers on the moon uncover an alien object underneath the surface of the moon.
Right.
So you can, if you're familiar with the film at all, you'll see how that, fits the middle section of 2001. But he started to write a novel alongside the screenplay. And it's interesting to read the novel because there are some differences. At some point, they were going to go to Saturn at the end of the film. And in fact, they go to Jupiter.
Right, yeah.
But it's still Saturn in the novel. And when he wrote his novel sequels, he had to retrofit that and just ignore what he'd said in the first book, say they went to Jupiter instead.
Yeah.
But anything that he wrote is well worth a read. I mean, huge ideas, massive, big ideas. And he's one of my favourite writers. He won the Hugo and Nebula Awards. These are kind of the Oscars and BAFTAs of science fiction.
Yeah.
And he was so big, he actually now has an award named after him, the Arthur C. Clarke Award, which rather amusingly, when it first started, the winner would get £1,000. In 2001, they changed it to winning £2,001.
Oh, amazing. Love that.
And every year since then, it's gone up by £1. So this year, winners get it for, £2,025.
Amazing. Oh,
Isn't that incredible?
Love that. That's
But
brilliant.
yeah, I mean, he's an absolute giant of science fiction. And even if you think you're not a science fiction fan, give him a go. Rendezvous with Rama and Childhood's End and 2001 would be my three go-to novels.
That's really interesting as well, what you said about kind of it being a slightly more optimistic and more human.
Yeah.
And there is something that kind of marries quite well with Kubrick in that regard, right? We hear that a lot about how he took, even Anthony Burgess' A Clockwork Orange, that had a more optimistic ending than
That's right,
when
yeah.
Kubrick
And he just cut that out. Because,
he cut that out.
Yeah.
Obviously, The Shining, Stephen King is a much more kind of humanist writer, actually.
Definitely.
That's why he didn't like what Kubrick did to The Shining, right? So it's really interesting. He works with these more kind of human, optimistic writers, and then he strips their stories to the bare bones, doesn't he?
I think Clarke survives better
Yeah.
because the ending is ambiguous.
It's ambiguous, absolutely. You could see the ending as feeling sort of somewhat uplifting and optimistic.
You can, or it can be really quite terrifying.
Right, exactly.
And weirdly, Clark has a slightly darker ending. We'll talk about that when we talk about the ending of the film. We are going to spoil a great deal of this film, which I think should be taken for granted with Evolution of Horror, because we talk about so much detail. But we will spoil this film royally for you. So,
we will.
Please stop listening now. Go watch it, then come back and sit here and seethe. What a bloody idiot. Why has he made me watch this film?
Let's talk about Stanley Kubrick then for a moment, shall we? This feels like a bit of a moment for him because obviously, like, again, let's talk about where he was at in his career at this point in time. Was he, even in 1968, one of the biggest, most respected directors in the world, as he soon became?
I think he was, yeah. I mean, he started out making this string of smaller, low-budgeted films, and then his big breakthrough was really 1957 when he did Paths of Glory.
Yeah, what a film.
What an amazing film. Again, I mean, anything, like you, I'm a huge fan of Kubrick.
Yeah.
You know, if I'm impressed, you know, by anybody, I might even say he was my favourite director of all time, because there's so many of his films I love. You know, I love John Carpenter, I love Dario Argento, I love Terence Fisher, but there are films in their catalogues that I think, do I really have to watch that one there?
Yeah.
Kubrick, I can watch them all.
Yeah.
Yes, even Eyes Wide Shut, I will go back and watch
100%.
Because, you know, I think it's a failure, but it's an incredible failure.
Yeah.
We should all be so lucky that our failings are that good.
I agree.
You know,
I agree, and I actually think that film has aged quite well. I think it gets better with more watches.
It does. I think that's true of a lot of Kubrick stuff. Actually, that when you first watch it, it can be kind of alienating.
Yes.
It had a sort of very unique, alienating style. But the more you watch them, the more you can tease things out of them.
Yeah.
You know, he's a very intelligent filmmaker.
Yeah.
Very intelligent. And, you know, he did Paths of Glory, and Paths of Glory set him on a road to basically just doing literary adaptations.
Right, yeah.
Even 2001, although there was no prior book, there kind of was by the time the film came out, because the book came out before the film.
Yes.
Although it cheated because they were working on it together. But his entire career, what there was a bit, because I mean, you think he made 12 films over 20 years or something like that, or 30 years. Yeah. He did not move very quickly.
No.
And he's very methodical. In fact, he made the decision to make the proverbial good science fiction film in 1964, so it took 4 years to make this thing and finally get it out.
Yeah,
you know?
That is classic Kubrick, isn't it? Yeah.
We've all heard those stories, haven't we, about The Shining, where he took, you know, like the Scatman Crothers walks across a room, so he films it 80 times or something, you know, just to make sure he's absolutely got what he wants.
Yeah.
Yes, he was a madman.
Yeah.
But he was a genius, and all geniuses are mad, to be honest, to a degree or other. And, you know, after Paths of Glory, he did Spartacus. Mm-hmm. You know, that was a huge, epic film.
Yeah.
Then the controversial Lolita, which we've already mentioned, which he made here in the UK. He'd arrived in the UK, as I said, a few years earlier and never went back.
Yeah.
And there's always been this talk about he developed a phobia of flying.
That's right.
I'm not sure how true it is, because he had a pilot's license. But the story goes that a friend and colleague had been killed in a plane crash.
Right.
And he'd taken possession of the charred remains of the camera and sound equipment that he'd got, and it sort of affected him so badly, he swore there and then, I'm never going to fly again.
Right.
And indeed, that plays into an extraordinary technical bit of business with 2001, which we'll discuss in a minute, the fact that he wouldn't fly.
Absolutely. If you think about every film he's made since the 60s and how they were basically all filmed in sort of Elstree in London, basically, it's actually astonishing when you look at the films, right? Every
time I watch it, I cannot get my head around the fact that he rebuilt war-torn Vietnam in Docklands.
Right.
You know, what? I mean, it looked like they're in actual Vietnam, and he's not. He's just, you know, I can look out my window and see what became of the locations for that film. It's just so weird. It's
unbelievable. One of my favourite things that ever happened to me in my professional life was when I worked as a runner at the BBC, and for a while I worked in Elstree Studios, and I got to go and have a little look in the kitchen, which is where some of the scenes of the kitchen in The Shining are filmed. Right. So I was essentially wandering around the Overlook kitchen at one point, which was very cool. You know?
The whole of the Overlook was filmed in Britain. I mean, it's incredible.
Absolutely mad.
But this was a testament to his genius, and a testament to the fact that people of great talent wanted to work with him.
Yeah.
He was difficult, but people wanted to work with him because they knew he was so good that they'd have so much to learn from him. And they knew that no matter what anybody thought of it, the finished film would be extraordinary.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, he's a great testament to him doing that, So by the time he came to make this, he just made Doctor Strangelove, which was a huge hit.
Huge, yeah.
And I think MGM kind of fell over themselves.
Yeah.
To sort of like, do what you like, Stanley. I'm sure I would love, one of my time machine moments is to go back to that first screening room meeting of MGM execs at Boreham Wood, where they all got together and saw the first cut of 2001: A Space Odyssey, which was longer than the version we've got now, and looked at it and thought, what the hell have we done?
Yes. I think this is it. I think this is the interesting thing, right? It feels like from 2001 onwards, and probably after, like you say, after Doctor Strangelove and, Paths of Glory.
Yeah.
This feels like where he becomes the blank check director. Make whatever you want, we'll make it happen. Like,
right.
He's now become like this kind of godlike figure in the film industry, right? And suddenly his films were taking years and years to make. He would have complete control. And you feel that. I think something does shift from the sort of his films in the late 50s, early 60s to this point onwards. I think his films become kind of events, don't they, from this point onwards?
They do. They become important in air quotes.
Exactly.
They're no longer just a Saturday night at the pictures.
No, it's a Stanley Kubrick movie.
They're works of art from this point on. And it's hard to imagine in 2025 that any director would be as indulged as Kubrick was.
Yeah.
Can you imagine any of the money men saying to any of the great directors we've got around at the moment, take 4 years and make even Christopher Nolan,
who is the closest thing we have these
who's
days.
the closest we've got to him. I can't imagine them saying, go make Interstellar, and you can take 4 years to do it if you like. They'd be on the phone every couple of weeks. Have you finished yet? Have you even started yet?
Exactly.
So it's extraordinary that he was allowed to do it at a time when directors were allowed to get away with that, and look what we got as a result.
Unbelievable.
Incredible body of work.
And so he is accused of being, and we don't have time to go into all of the mad stories about him as a person behind the scenes. We've mentioned briefly, he was this quite reclusive figure. He was quite a harsh taskmaster, borderlining on abusive when you hear about how he treated people like Shelley Duvall, of course, right, later on down the line. But how does that translate in his films, I suppose? Because there is something weird. There's a disconnect in my brain where I do think, why do I love this film so much? When actually, a lot of the human beings in his films talk like robots. Like, they don't.
They do.
Even when you think, I was rewatching 2001 this week for this, I was thinking, it's funny because even the characters, they don't really feel like human beings a lot of the time.
Hal has more warmth than the astronauts he's supposed to be serving,
So isn't it a strange thing that we all love these films so much when actually, they could be accused of being just too cold, I think.
Maybe, but I think that was part of what he was trying to do, that he was trying to show that, the alienation of modern life.
Right.
As seen through the lens of science fiction and drama and all the rest of it. But the characters are, look at something like Full Metal Jacket.
Right.
They become robots because they're conditioned to be so.
Yeah.
And, that was the whole point of the story, that these, these fine young men from wherever across America were taken and brutalised into being these killing machines that have no emotions whatsoever.
Yes, God.
There's a horrific moment near the end of the film where they kill a sniper who's been taking out a group of their, colleagues. And they just stand and look at this dying sniper with no emotion whatsoever.
Oh, God, yeah.
They're just like, they're as monolithic as the monoliths in 2001. There's nothing there. Humanity has gone.
Right.
It's been wiped away. Now, I wonder if that's what he was trying to do. Now, I think certainly it works really well here.
It does.
Because, they're on this space mission for, 2/3 of the film, third of the film, whatever. And I kind of think you need to have cold, distant people. You don't want some, jabbering, bloody over-emotional fool like me wondering about a spaceship on a mission to Jupiter. I'd crash it almost immediately. You need very calm people, very detached people. And so, in that sense, I think it works perfectly for this film.
Yeah.
I think it works perfectly in The Shining because, you're supposed to become more and more detached from Jack as you go along.
Yes.
You know, but there are things like you can't help but feel something for the boys in Full Metal Jacket.
Oh,
you feel
completely.
for them.
Yeah.
Dr. Strangelove is very funny.
Yes.
And so Clockwork Orange is very funny.
It is.
So there is that warmth there, but it's disguised. It's kind of... It's buried a little bit, buried like the monolith on the moon.
That's right.
It's kind of, it's just beneath the surface. You have to dig for it a little bit.
Absolutely. And if we talk about this movie as a screenplay as well, there is something really... I mean, there's probably only about 50 lines of dialogue in the entire near 3-hour runtime, isn't there, as well? It's very sparse.
It's 31 minutes before someone says anything,
Right.
and then they just say, there you go, level 3,
Yes,
please.
exactly.
It's a very mundane piece of dialogue, and there's an awful lot of that. There's like a fairly excruciating scene where Hayward Floyd, who's the first of the human beings we actually have any contact with in the film, has a very awkward meeting with some Russians on the space station.
Yes.
And they're doing this sort of inane small talk.
Exactly.
And you're mentally screaming, just leave them alone. Just go, walk away. You've got better things to do than talk about this rubbish with these people.
Right.
And he does that so brilliantly here, the sort of mundanity of life in 1999 in that scene, 2001 in the later scenes, while at the same time presenting us, people from 1968 and 1977 and whenever we first saw it, with this incredible vision of the future. Yeah. But everybody in the film is not at all impressed by it.
No, you're
in
absolutely
the same way
right.
that we're not impressed.
Yeah.
We're not impressed by 2025, are we? It's just where we are.
Absolutely. They treat it like as if we were about to board a Ryanair flight, essentially.
That's right. Yeah. It's as boring as that.
Yeah.
And yet somehow we're still sitting there sort of jaw on the floor because of the incredible design work and the amazing effects.
Exactly.
And everybody else, no one even notices what's going on around them.
Right. Exactly.
So, it's a very strange thing. But, it takes 31 minutes before anybody says anything intelligible other than, which is like the 8 men in the first part of the film.
Well, let's that's a nice segue. Let's get into it. We're going to go through this kind of vaguely chronologically. So I will begin with, we'll talk about these kind of specific sections of the film. And maybe we can talk about different elements of the film within each section. So I guess a good place to start maybe is to talk about the music and the sound design, because when the movie starts, there is just darkness, right, to begin with.
There is. And it's actually an incredibly bold start to a film when you think about it. Starts with darkness. You then hear this sort of rumbling sound, which is the beginning of the overture to Also Sprach Zarathustra by Richard Strauss, which for 70 years it was a tone poem, mostly known to classical music buffs. Since 1968 it's been the theme from 2001. That's what we now call it. Everybody says, that theme from 2001. But we hear that, we see this glorious alignment of planets. And we think, 2001, A Space Odyssey. Isn't that beautiful? And then we get a caption, The Dawn of Man, and we get a bunch of monkeys. And it's like, what the hell?
It's so interesting. That music, like you say, that we now all associate with 2001, interestingly, that it wasn't written for 2001, right?
It wasn't.
There's something really interesting, again, about Kubrick. A lot of the time he used just classical music in his films, as opposed to composing original scores, Well, there was an original score commissioned and recorded. A guy called Alex North had written a score for it. But when he was putting the film together with his editor, they'd use temp tracks to get the atmosphere. So, you know those Ligeti tracks that he uses, those really strange, sort of Luxor Turner and atmospheres, those sort of whining, almost like ambience, almost like synthesizer music, but it was before synthesizers. And they fitted perfectly with his vision of space travel and the emptiness of space and all the rest of it. So he got poor old Alex North to write this soundtrack, and then at the end he thought, I think I prefer this stuff, to be honest, that we've been using as a temp track. And so they kept it, and it works beautifully. That scene where the space shuttle approaches the space station and it's scored to the Blue Danube. That's my favourite moment, I think. I love it.
Can you imagine if that didn't have the Blue Danube on it?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
You'd be sitting there looking at your watch thinking, this is taking a bit of a while, isn't it? But because it becomes this space ballet... this dance between these bits of technology. It's glorious.
It is.
And that's all down to the music.
It is. The music is phenomenal. I had to listen to the soundtrack while I was writing up my notes and questions for it, because it really puts me in that place, you know. It's
definitely
wonderful.
Like I say, nobody calls it Also Sprach Zarathustra anymore. It is the theme from 2000. Every time you hear that, and it's been spoofed so many times since 1968.
Yeah.
You hear those, first three notes and the pum pum, and you know exactly.
Yeah.
You know exactly what they're referencing, even if you've never seen the film.
Totally. 100%.
People know that this is 2001.
Absolutely. Completely agree.
And talking of music, has there ever been a more heartbreaking rendition of Daisy Bell or Daisy Daisy than we get in this film?
Right, exactly.
We'll talk about that later, but oh my God, that is... We talk about it being cold, this film. It warms up when the computer dies.
It does.
Which is so ironic, isn't it?
It is. It's really interesting. The use of music and the way he kind of twists it in this movie is so interesting. So,
Indeed.
So then we begin, like you say, with The Dawn of Man, which is, again, what a bold way to start your science fiction film. It's about 20, 25 minutes of just...
It's 30 minutes. It's the whole of the first act,
30 minutes of apes.
Yeah.
What do you make of this first 30 minutes?
Well, as I said at the start, this is all about interpretation.
Yeah.
Here's my interpretation. I think most people will share my interpretations on this bit.
Yeah.
It's the start of what I see as the aliens' great experiment.
Right.
Whoever these aliens are. Mankind has gone down an evolutionary dead end and is dying out. We're introduced to a group of hominids led by a character called Moonwatcher, which we don't get from the film, but he's in the novel. Hence, if you read the novel, it becomes... Because, we do see him at one point looking at the moon.
Right, yeah.
And, of course, this is wonderful, because later on we're going to go to the moon. Yeah. But he spends all his time staring at the moon. He's fascinated by it. And this is, indicative of early fascination in human beings, even before we become Homo sapiens, of our fascination with space and all the rest of it. And they're living in sort of arid African landscape. There's very little plant life. But they're not very bright, these hominids. They haven't yet figured out that there's all these animals that are roaming around with them, like wild boar are sort of sitting among them.
Right.
And even as a lifelong vegetarian, I kind of think, well, eat one of them. You'll survive as a species and you'll end up with me, who has the option to become a vegetarian. But they don't do it. Something has failed. Evolution has let them down. As those little neurons aren't firing in their brains. And they're almost extinct until one day they wake up and there's the monolith. And somehow, this is a very creepy moment, it's somehow arrived in the middle of the night without waking them.
And again, the music suggests it's very creepy, right? This is treated as a very creepy moment.
Very creepy, almost like a supernatural event.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in the, if I remember right, it's been a while since I've read the book. I know it was the original intention. I think it stayed in the book. It was more like a television set.
Right.
Where they were watching images.
Oh, that makes sense, yeah.
But they come, this monolith is built on the golden ratio. 1 to 2 to 3 or something like that. So it's like perfect. In fact, watch Full Metal Jacket during the sniper sequence. You can see them move past a ruined building in the background, which is in the same dimensions.
Right, yes. He
quoted from 2001 endlessly throughout the rest of his career. But this thing has arrived, and the apes are very scared of it, as you might imagine. You've got Ligeti's music, his sort of voices and sort of weird sounds rising and falling as they approach it, and they nervously touch it.
Yeah.
And at first, nothing seems to happen. But what it's done, the aliens have seen something in this fledgling species and have thought, well, let's give them a kick up the evolutionary ladder.
Yeah.
Let's see what they can do if we implant this idea that they can actually hunt.
Yeah.
And so we next see Moonwatcher, this superb moment, again using also Sprach Zarathustra, that he's got a jawbone of one of the animals that's died of natural causes. And he starts just sort of hitting things randomly with it. And as we crescendo, you get a bam bam, then go dum dum dum, all that. You get these little flashes of boars falling.
Yeah.
And it's like, finally, they've learned. Then it all settles down. We see them eating the entrails. And they're saved. The problem is, and this is where my theory starts to fall into place here, the aliens didn't predict that the first thing we would do with this new knowledge is ensure our future. The second thing we would do is commit murder.
Yeah, that's it. Our propensity to use any knowledge to then destroy ourselves.
Destroy ourselves. Yeah, basically, Moonwatcher clubs to death the leader of a rival group of hominids at the waterhole. For no reason. They've been existing side by side for a long time. A lot of shouting and yelling and all the rest of it, but they can both drink. There's enough water for both groups.
Yes.
But now that he's got this weapon,
that's it.
He clubs him to death.
Yeah,
it's the first act of war.
It is.
Maybe
it is, and also there's this idea of the dawn of technology too, right? With like using a tool for the first time as well.
Indeed,
yeah.
And we're going to talk about that in a bit more detail in a moment, because we're going to have the most extraordinary jump from the most primitive technology to the most advanced.
Indeed,
it is. Yeah, but the fact that the first thing they do is commit murder.
Right.
Or the second thing they do is commit murder. A point to make at this moment, all those beautiful African vistas, all of them shot at Boreham Wood.
Yeah.
They're all shot in a studio. Kubrick dispatched a team of photographers, and remember, he was a photographer himself originally.
Yeah.
So he knew what he was doing.
He did.
Sent them off with sort of, large format cameras to get high definition backgrounds, which were then projected onto screens at Boreham Wood, and the art department built the set to merge into those backgrounds.
That's amazing.
Nothing you're seeing here was filmed in Africa. It was all filmed in a studio at Boreham Wood, and it looks extraordinary.
Unbelievable. And for people who haven't been to Boreham Wood, it's the most unglamorous place you'll ever go. I mean, it's not, no offence to listeners that live in Boreham Wood, but you walk down it and it's just your typical kind of high street town, and it's so amazing. Actually, now when you walk down it, there are pictures everywhere of Kubrick, and they really kind of sell it on this was Kubrick's turf, But it's unbelievable.
I went to Pinewood once, and of course, when I went through the gates, there's 007 stage.
Yeah.
Oh, this is great, it's great. And then you sort of walk along a little bit, and there's like an alleyway down the side, just full of junk.
Yes,
just full of all the wood they'd just thrown out from the previous sets and all the rest of it. And it's all a bit grubby.
Yeah,
it's all a bit mucky. And then you go in, and it's organised chaos on the soundstage. All the glamour, you could absolutely be disavowed of the glamour.
Yeah,
just by going to if you're very lucky, you can get into a film studio, go and have a look at something being shot, and you just think, actually, I now understand why I write about films rather than make them.
Completely.
They don't want to do this. It's not nice.
It's not. It's not as exciting as you think it's going to be.
It's not. The amount of sitting around doing nothing.
Yes,
is extraordinary.
Completely. Yeah. But yeah, it does. It looks stunning, doesn't it? Everything about
it's amazing.
That, it looks absolutely beautiful.
For many years, I was convinced they did go to Africa.
Right. Yeah.
I was absolutely convinced they did. It was many years later, after I first saw it, they read that no, they hadn't set foot outside Boreham Wood, which is amazing.
And it is, again, I think this is one of those sections of the film that does benefit from watching it in the cinema, because you're not really, there's no dialogue. It is like you're watching a silent film, except the sound design is actually overpowering at times with those screaming apes, it's
extraordinary
jarring.
Shot where I assume it's Moonwatcher, one of the apes, turns to the camera, at the camera, and it's like, suddenly we're there. Suddenly we're the aliens observing them. And it's really kind of unsettling that this ape can see us. Really clever shot. It's just a very brief moment, but it's just enough, just breaking the fourth wall and inviting us into their world.
Yeah.
But also warning us, don't come too close to us.
Yeah, exactly that. So, Kev, shall we talk about what many people describe as the greatest jump cut in cinema history, right?
What can you say? It wasn't the first time this was done, of course. It had been done before. Most noticeably, Powell and Pressburger did it in A Canterbury Tale in 1944.
Right.
It jumps from, not quite as far back in the distance, but a Kestrel being launched by a Hunter, which takes to the air, then turns into a Spitfire.
Right, yeah.
As it swoops down. But the sheer scale of this jump cut. Moonwatcher, having beaten to death his rival, throws the bone that he uses into the air, and it just spins through the air, and we're watching it and we're thinking, well, where's this going?
Yeah.
And suddenly, bang, jump cut, and it's an orbiting satellite.
Yeah.
We've suddenly jumped from an absolutely unknowable time in the past to 1999. In fact, they don't state it as such, but it's actually 1999.
Right.
And if you read the book, I think it's in the book. I know that Clark talked about this, that thing we first see is actually an orbiting nuclear weapons platform.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So we've gone in the blink of an eye from the most primitive weapon to the most advanced. We've gone from killing one of our rivals to wiping out the entire planet in the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
So again, you see what I mean about if you sort of buy into all the extra bits that go around this film, you suddenly get new sort of ideas, new impressions of what they were trying to do. But yeah, that's meant to be an orbiting nuclear weapons platform.
Well, that makes so much sense, doesn't it?
Yeah,
absolutely.
it does.
And I guess that's the power of, and this is why me, along with millions of other film students around the world, I expect, watched 2001 as a way of exploring what cinema can do, right? And I guess that's the point, is that cinema can take you at the blink of an eye from the dawn of man to 1999 in such a kind of poetic way, you know? I think that's what makes that jump cut so spectacular.
At one point, Kubrick had a narrator for the film. But he decided, quite rightly, that we could work it out for ourselves, and if we couldn't, well, that was our problem. So he took the narration away. And I think a lesser filmmaker would have done that. You would have sort of had a close-up of the body of the hominid, dead hominid, and you've had this very stentorian voice saying, and man committed his first act of murder. Right. And now, and then he would have given you a little montage of war throughout the ages until we arrived at the future. Yeah. Not for Kubrick. We don't need all that.
No.
We don't need all that. We just do this jump.
Yeah.
And interestingly, we don't get a chapter heading for this central section.
No, that's true.
We're still in the dawn of man.
Yeah.
Even though we're out in space now with nuclear weapons, we're still at the dawn of man.
Yeah.
And that is key to my interpretation of the ending, which we'll obviously get to. It's everything else has these kind of chapter headings.
Yes, you're right.
But not this section. This section is an extension of the dawn of man.
And then we go into, this is, again, we've mentioned it already, this is one of my favourite sections of the film, actually. It's so beautiful, this kind of blue Danube.
Yeah.
This is, I guess, a great opportunity to talk about the sort of visual effects in this movie, because that's what the next 10-15 minutes feel like to me. Like, there's barely any dialogue. We're not really introduced to a kind of a sense of story or character
yet. Not at all.
We're just watching, like you say, the kind of everyday mundanity in 1999 of what it's like to take a flight in a commercial space flight.
Right. Yeah, it's a Pan Am flight he's on. So
exactly.
Yeah.
So we get these gorgeous shots accompanied by the blue Danube of the outside of the ships, everything spinning and rotating.
That's
and then we go inside and we see like the equivalent of like an air stewardess.
That's right, yeah.
Right, bring someone their food. There's a pen floating around.
That's it, yeah.
Tell us a little bit about this, because it still, I think, still looks just stunning, doesn't it? And I think partly because so much of it was done in camera, that's why it looks so good.
Yeah, he tried to do everything as physically as possible, to the point where that satellite that we first see, we eventually see it like at a sort of 3/4 view as it sort of drifts away from us. That's actually a photograph of a model.
Wow. Okay.
It's not actually the model itself. They made the model, photographed it, and then they just animated that. Moving across the screen seamlessly. You don't see any juddering at all. It's just beautifully animated. But he wanted everything to feel as if it was real.
Yeah.
You know, I said earlier about those 60s science fiction films, and we haven't seen anything on this sort of scale for a long, long time. We'd had Metropolis, which was huge and groundbreaking in its visual effects. We'd had Things to Come.
Yeah.
You know, that was massive. That was huge. We'd had Forbidden Planet, which pushed back the envelope of effects, but nothing like this film. The realism of it, and this whole sequence, you quite rightly say is one of your favourite parts of the film. It almost feels to me like Kubrick and that impish sense of humour saying, "Okay, you come to see a film called 2001. I've given you a whole bunch of stuff with cavemen. Have 15 minutes of me showing off.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, getting my effects guys and letting them loose and doing what they want to do and just showing it. And you just sit there absolutely entranced. And like you say, there's no hint of what the story is about yet.
No.
We're a good hour into the film before the story even begins to slowly emerge. The main thrust of the story. But you've got this absolutely gorgeous set of effects, physical models being used. They did amazing things, like, the whole interior of the Discovery that we'll see later. Oh. The astronauts running as it's rotating. They actually built this massive centrifuge at Shepperton Studios.
Yes.
And it weighed 30 tons or something like that.
Oh, my God.
Keir Dullea, they both got into this thing, this centrifuge, and started to run. They were like hamsters in a cage, in a wheel.
Right. Yeah.
And they were just running, and the camera was just out of shot on the floor. There's a slit in the floor. Mm-hmm. And that's where the camera is. It's positioned so it's not moving.
That's right.
They're running on the spot in front of it, but it looks like they're running and the whole thing is rotating.
It's so clever.
They built special camera gimbals, which hadn't been used before, now commonplace, to get that sort of 3D movement through space.
Yeah.
The astronauts floating in space, they were literally hanging by wires.
That's right.
And the cameras are on the floor underneath them looking up, so that you can't see the wires behind them.
Yeah, so clever.
It's extraordinary. In fact, at one point, one of the stuntmen doing those scenes, Bill Weston, passed out through asphyxiation because the spacesuits didn't allow carbon dioxide out.
Right, oh my God.
So he was breathing out and his helmet was filling up with carbon dioxide and he passed out.
Oh my God, yeah.
Kubrick being Kubrick, shouted, brilliant, great, keep rolling.
Of course he did, yeah. Of course he did.
And apparently there's a lovely quote here, I must tell you, from Weston. They said when he came back down and was brought round, he said, I went looking for Stanley. I was going to shove MGM right up his... And the thing is, Stanley had left the studio and sent Victor Linden, the associate producer, to talk to me. And he claimed that Kubrick fled the studio for 2 or 3 days. I know he didn't come back in the next day, and I'm sure it wasn't the day after, because I was going to do him.
Amazing. Yeah.
So, that ties into that perfectionism thing we talked about. His somewhat cavalier attitude towards other people's working practices.
God, I mean, he was a monster by all accounts.
He was a monster,
yeah.
But then, again, geniuses tend to be, He's a flawed human being. But this is how they achieved these effects that we hadn't seen before.
Yeah. Yeah.
There were times before and after this where they represented weightlessness by people jumping on a trampoline just outside, shot of camera. And that's how, that's how important this film was.
It's brilliant.
In terms of effects.
It's just that idea of playing with perspective, and Kubrick just instinctively knew what you could do with cameras and perspective and that kind of thing. Like he knew, just had an instinct for it, I think. Yeah.
Although he had a bit of an ego, he knew well enough to go to the right people to do these things. So he was employing NASA design consultants and futurists and all the rest of it to come up with this world that he got in his head. That Arthur C. Clarke had described for him. He'd envisaged it, and he said, right, this is what I want. Being the perfectionist, he was sending stuff back and saying, not quite right, let's get it right.
Yeah.
And the end result is a film which... I was watching Interstellar again the other day, and it's a film I love.
It's a great film.
Interstellar.
Yeah.
But I'm still watching it and thinking, Stanley Kubrick got there first, didn't he?
Oh, completely.
He beat you to this.
Absolutely. I actually interviewed Chris Nolan about Interstellar, and he said, it was my tribute to Stanley Kubrick.
Of course it is, absolutely. He's an unashamed fanboy when it comes to Stanley Kubrick. I don't think any serious filmmaker is.
Yeah, completely.
I think, there isn't a filmmaker in the world who wants to be taken seriously who says, oh, Kubrick, what an idiot.
Right, exactly.
Nobody says that,
I love the moment when the air stewardess kind of does the little kind of circular walk with her gravity boots around the rotating set as well. It's just
which is another sort of smaller centrifuge, just carrying her around with the camera locked. And I mentioned this, a little plug for our little side project, our 60-week side project.
Exactly.
The hammer thing that we're doing. That they did something similar, in fact, in the Quatermass experiment.
Yeah.
Which came out many years before this film. But there is a scene on the film that they're watching of the astronauts where one of them does walk up the wall to go to inspect something. But that was beautifully done. And she was really wearing Velcro shoes. So, and the floating pen, once you know how it's done, you can see it. So maybe I shouldn't say it, but stick your fingers in your ears for a minute or two. It's actually on a piece of glass with a bit of glue holding it in place. And they're rotating the glass to make it look like it's moving. You can actually see when the stewardess comes to pick it up.
You can see
she's
that
not plucking it out. There's a slight judder as it comes off.
Yeah, there's a slight bit of resistance from the glue.
That's right.
That's all you can see. But I love that so much. There's something magic about those kinds of older ways of doing stuff on camera, like that reminds me of magic tricks, like going back to George Méliès. There's something about those sorts of camera tricks that I think are brilliant and exciting.
This was kind of the end result of what Méliès has started.
Yeah, you could start from Voyage to the Moon or whatever it's called, right?
That's right,
and then end here, basically.
End up with 2001,
Yeah.
And they're all the same thing, essentially. It's just the technology's got better. And
Yeah.
I think it's the physicality of the effects
Yes.
in 2001. You could easily recreate every effect in 2001 with CGI.
Yeah,
That would be very easy. And it wouldn't feel the same.
Right. Yeah.
It would not feel the same. Nolan knew that as well, that he was using physical models and all the rest of it, because he knew that there was a weight to them.
You need that
There's a
weight.
sort of-
yeah.
I think I've mentioned this quote before, but one of my favourite writers, William Gibson, in the novel Neuromancer, when he's talking about the Matrix, the sort of that he goes into, he says there's no there.
Right, yeah.
And I feel that with CGI, that there's no there.
Yeah.
It's just an image.
Yes.
Whereas 2001, it feels like there's that wonderful shot, isn't there, when the camera glides through the spokes of the space station.
Yeah.
As it's turning. And it just effortlessly glides through while the Blue Danube's playing. And you feel like you've just passed through a very large structure.
Yeah.
It's breathtaking. And it's the kind of film... Oh, I'm going to be such an old codger now. It's the sort of film we don't see today, unless it's Christopher Nolan.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
And God bless Christopher Nolan for doing it.
So then finally, like you say, we're nearly about an hour into this movie before we are introduced to some characters, right? Dr. Hayward Floyd.
Oh, hello, Dr. Floyd.
How are you?
Sorry I'm late.
That's quite all right. You're looking great.
Thank you. It's nice to have you back. Did you have a good flight?
Oh, very nice indeed.
Good. Well, shall we go through?
Page was number 17.
Thank you, Miss Turner.
Thank you. Wow.
This way.
What do you make of this section? Again, this kind of very mundane thing of this guy, he's taking a flight, he goes on a little video call with his daughter.
Which is lovely, isn't it?
A lovely little moment. And then he has this meeting with these Russians and everything.
Sure.
Again, there's something very, if we were talking in normal cinematic terms, just a bit dry about this stuff, in theory, right?
In theory, but it's fascinating. The little girl, by the way, was Kubrick's daughter.
Of course.
So, she steals the show. She's the most human
Yes,
character
she's
in
the
it.
heart of this film.
lovely.
Yeah.
Bring me back a bush baby. I want a bush baby for my birthday. She's gorgeous. She's lovely.
Are you coming to my party tomorrow?
I'm sorry, sweetheart, but I can't.
Why not?
Well, Daddy's traveling. Very sorry about it, but I just can't.
Oh,
I'm going to send you a very nice present, though.
all right.
Anything special that you want?
Yes,
What?
a telephone.
We got lots of telephones already. Can't you think of anything else you want for your birthday? Something very special?
Yes,
What?
a bush baby.
A bush baby. Well, we'll have to see about that.
We'd say about it being dry and cold and distant, but there's a terrific moment here which makes me laugh out loud every time when he goes to use the space toilet.
Yeah.
There's a list of instructions about like 25 things you have to do before you can actually use it. Trust me, as a man, you get to a certain age, you haven't got to the right time to read 2 instructions, let alone 25, It's
so true.
Hilariously funny. And again, it's that impish sense of humour.
Absolutely.
Here's the future, it's all shiny and lovely, but you can't just go to the toilet.
Right.
You've got to
exactly.
follow a set of instructions and read every one of them carefully, because otherwise you're going to crash the spaceship, And he's really funny. But it is kind of dry, and the humans are dwarfed by the spectacle.
Yes.
Which, as I said, I think was part of the plan. I think it was like, okay, you put up with you've indulged me with my 8 men. This is what you came to see. Mm-hmm. Sort of, suck it up, suckers. This is it. This is as good as it's going to get. This is, this is where we're going to go completely mad with the effects budget and just do these wonderful things. And then we get the beginnings of the gist of a story.
Yeah.
In this sequence,
where
Hayward Floyd, played by William Sylvester, he gives a little briefing to the group of people on the moon. It turns out that there's been a news blackout. They're claiming that there's a plague on the moon base.
Yeah.
And the Russians are very interested. Leonard Rossiter playing one of the Russians.
That's right.
Which is extraordinary. That's still... I still watch that and I still think, that's Rigsby.
Yeah.
He's on the moon and he's speaking
weird.
Russian. That's very odd. But they're suspicious of what's going on. They've locked everything down, said there's a plague. And what it is, in fact, they've discovered something. The Tycho magnetic anomaly, which is, in fact, another monolith. buried under the surface of the moon. Now, Kev's interpretation time coming up.
Hey.
That the aliens, having seen what we did as hominids, turn on each other, commit murder, start a war, they've abandoned the experiments. We're a hopeless case.
Right.
They've given up on us. And what they've done, they've planted a warning beacon under the surface of the moon. So that if one day we get to the moon and we start to become a bit of a threat, it fires a signal off to them to warn them, look out, they've got out, they've escaped, what are we going to do now? What the aliens didn't reckon on is our natural sense of curiosity.
Right.
So that we don't know it's a warning that's been sent off to this other monolith around Jupiter. We just think, oh, what's that all about? Let's go and have a look, which we'll come to in a moment.
Okay.
But, it's like that's the sort of fallibility of the aliens. They couldn't understand where we might end up as a species, that we aren't this naturally questioning, exploring species. They didn't foresee that happening. So they'd abandoned us to our fate and set up this warning under the moon. But they didn't figure out the consequences of that. And that's my interpretation of what's going on here. And, the first time we get to see it, I don't understand why, because obviously they've emptied the crater around the monolith and the sun has shined on it already, obviously.
Yes.
They couldn't have done that. My little theory, I'm going to lose so many people here, is that Heywood Floyd is a direct descendant of Moonwatcher.
Oh, wow. Oh, this is brilliant.
So that when he touches the monolith, as Moonwatcher had, that acts as the warning signal.
So it requires somebody to touch the monolith before it kind of springs into action.
Yeah. And I like to think that Heywood Floyd is just the latest in a long line of Moonwatchers.
That makes sense. I mean, that kind of adds even more credence to the jump cut, doesn't it? That they're part of the same line of descendants.
I'm saying this now and I'm beginning to doubt myself. Was this in the novel? It's been so long since I've read the novel. Either way, I like it as an idea. And
it's very cool.
It doesn't matter if you buy into it or not, because the story still works. But I think it's just one of those things you can go, oh yeah, that's a little extra layer.
Yes.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
It's really good.
Exactly.
So now we've reached the point where we've seen the mundanity of life in 1999. We've then had this thing where we've realised for the first time in our history that we're not alone in the universe.
No. Yeah.
That there is other life out there. And they're signalling to us. No, they're not. They're actually signalling to each other, like, look out.
Right.
These maniac, bone-wielding murderers have escaped the bounds of gravity and they could be coming to get us. And so, this is actually the first moment. It's like that big conceptual leap where we finally get evidence that life exists in the universe.
I see. Yeah. I love that. That's really interesting. So how does that then, and maybe we'll come to this in the next section, but how does that then set up what we see for the rest of the movie then? Does what we see next lend to your theory of, like, we've been abandoned now by these people and we're doomed almost? I
think so, yeah. Because, like I say, they didn't expect us to be that inquisitive. They didn't expect us to spend billions making this giant, huge spaceship, putting people in deep sleep and sending them out on a mission to find out where that signal was going.
Yeah.
I think they probably thought they either won't care because we remember them as being these idiot hominids that nearly killed themselves, or they just thought they can't possibly do that. They won't be advanced enough to come and find us.
Yeah.
But we do. Yeah. We do. And that's, that's where Arthur C. Clarke is showing through.
And isn't it amazing? I feel like you could have, everything we've talked about so far, you probably could have condensed into like a 10-minute montage in a film.
Oh, you could.
You know, the apes, there's a monolith. We jump to 1999, people are travelling in space, and then there's a monolith. Like, I mean, that's essentially all that's happened so far.
That's all that's happened so far. Yeah. But it would have been a much more boring film.
Yeah.
It would have been. I think the fact that he takes the time to have this long, glorious dance sequence between a space shuttle and a space station, I think it's just a work of genius. I think it's hypnotising when you watch it. Just absolutely gorgeous.
I always love it as well, and I bet you do, Kev, as a sci-fi fan. I always love it when films treat the vacuum of space realistically, as in there's no sound, right?
That's right. The only sound we hear is the music.
Yeah, you don't actually hear, like, pew 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 in space or anything like that.
and the Discovery doesn't engage in dogfights with things because you know that when it comes to Jupiter, it has to start decelerating days beforehand, and all the rest of it. So because I'm a science nerd and because I loved the astronaut, the Apollo mission, all the rest of it, these all very much appeal to me. And I've just remembered one scene when they're on the moon again, the mundanity of it, when they're in the lunar shuttle thing, the lunar buggy heading to the crater. And they're sort of doling out the sandwiches.
Yes.
They've got a box full of, do you want cheese? I got ham. It's just like the ordinary
Incredible.
Guys at work, just ordinary guys at work doing their thing. And we're just sitting there going, my God, guys, look out of the window. Look at the incredible vistas beyond your window. And they just don't care because they've seen it a million times.
They've seen it a million times, absolutely. And actually, one of the things we haven't really mentioned is that, of course, this movie lent towards a big conspiracy about the Apollo 11 moon landing.
Oh,
right?
It did.
Obviously, throughout this process when Kubrick was developing this film throughout the 1960s was the space race, right?
That's right, yeah.
And America and Russia were both venturing into space for the first time and sending people into orbit for the first time and all of that. And then, of course, a year after this movie, you get the moon landing,
the moon
right?
landings,
and it's so funny, like how many people to this day think that Kubrick created that, right?
There are several points against that argument.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
When I was a kid, my dad took me downstairs in the middle of the night to watch the moon landings because it was such a big deal, and it was happening in the early hours of the morning over here. It was being broadcast on the BBC. Now all wiped. Can you believe that? They've lost all the original footage. All they've got is that where they pointed a cine camera at the screen, which is why it looks all... But it never looked like that originally.
Oh.
It was a really good signal, but they've lost it. It's all gone.
Oh my
NASA's
God.
lost it. The BBC have lost it, which of course fuels the conspiracy theories then, doesn't it? Oh, of course, they've deliberately lost it, so we can't look at it too closely.
Yeah.
But I remember going downstairs, watching the moon landing, being slightly disappointed because I'd seen the moon on Doctor Who a few weeks earlier, and it looked a lot more exciting than I've seen on the television. It was only a few weeks later that we were out and we saw the moon. And my dad pointed up and said, that's where those men were. And suddenly the penny dropped.
Right,
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
But, there was this idea, wasn't there, that Stanley Kubrick had faked the moon landing. So some people say we did go, but we didn't have any footage of it, so they faked it back. Which, how did they do that? It was ridiculous. It was going out live. Doesn't make any sense. And other people were saying we didn't go at all. Capricorn 1 becomes a film about the Mars mission that doesn't happen, all the rest of it. But two things that count against it. One, the moon looks a bit dull.
Yes.
It's, it is just this sort of flat landscape with a few mountainous bits on it and some craters and a lot of dust.
Yeah.
Stanley Kubrick would not have filmed that. As a perfectionist, he would not have allowed anyone to see that.
Yeah.
The biggest argument against it is the Russians have never once questioned whether the Americans went to the moon or not.
That is such a good point.
You would think if they had faked it, the Russians would have been all over that in 1968, 69, saying, no, it's all faked, it's all faked. They never did. They conceded defeat.
Yeah.
They got there first. That was that. You can also, if you've got a really good telescope or even a really good set of binoculars, you can actually see the bits they left behind on the moon on a clear night. So you can have a look at it, you can actually see it. They left mirrors on the moon. You can shine lasers off and bounce lasers off it. So somebody went there.
That's incredible.
So, and it wasn't Kubrick, sadly. I bet Kubrick would have loved to have gone. If they'd said to him, do you want to bring your film crew with you?
Yeah.
And you could shoot 2001 on location on the moon, he'd have just said, well, yeah, okay. And he wouldn't have asked everybody, wouldn't have asked the cast.
Yeah.
He would have just said, yeah, we're going to do it. And then told them, guys, we're going to the moon for real.
Absolutely. But this is it. I think when this movie was released in 1968, it was at the height of excitement about space, right? This, and actually this is something Chris Nolan talked to me about when he did Interstellar. He said that excitement about NASA and space has kind of gone these days, right?
It has.
But it was so there, like this was really hitting a zeitgeist, wasn't it, in 1968? This idea of like voyaging into space and seeing footage of the moon and planets and space and all of that kind of...
Well, like I said earlier, I was never really a sporty person as a kid. Never have been. And vaguely for about 10 minutes I liked West Bromwich Albion because my dad did and he took me to a game and I thought, this is quite dull, isn't it? So, So my heroes were astronauts. I thought they were the most amazing people because they'd been to another planet.
Yeah.
They hadn't. They'd been to the moon, but in my tiny little mind, they had been to another planet. They were spacemen. They were doing all the things I was reading in science fiction.
Yeah.
I was reading a lot of science fiction. You know, ever since I could learn to read, I was reading science fiction. They were doing it. They were living these stories. And so they were my heroes. Nowadays, rather sadly, the only time anybody gets even vaguely excited about space travel is if something blows up.
Right.
Or if celebrities go up.
Oh my God, exactly. If pop singers go up. Yeah, that's right.
There's an argument that, you know, we've got enough problems down here without having to worry about space. But when you think about what we got from the space program, you know, the development in computers.
Right.
My favourite Buzz Aldrin story, maybe I've told it here, I can't remember. He gets fed up of people coming up to him. He's the second man on the moon. He gets fed up of people coming up to him and saying, there's more computer power in my mobile phone than put you on the moon. And one day he got so fed up with it, he asked this guy, can I have a look at your phone? He was like, yeah, very nice, very nice. Threw it in the air and it clattered to the ground and he said, yeah, but it doesn't land as well as we did.
Amazing.
Super.
That's
but
great.
Everything we take for granted in our modern life, everything from computers to mobile phones to the internet, all came from the NASA program.
Yeah.
It all, you know, feeds back into our everyday lives. Have a look in 2001 and have a look at that or barely glimpsed moment because they didn't really think anything of it. They're using iPads.
Right, exactly.
When they're having their dinner, they're watching the news on tablets.
Yes.
And, you know, at the time, that was just like, just a bit of props.
Yeah.
Prop dressing. But, of course, it turns out it was predicting the future.
It really was. It really was. Maybe a few years after 2001 or 1999, but not far off. Not far off.
Exactly. And science fiction has done that. Science fiction has never really been about predicting the future. The good stuff is really about looking at the world around you and commenting on it. But an awful lot of people have been inspired by science fiction.
Yes.
You know, the people who made the first flip phones, first mobile phones, were trying to reproduce the communicator from Star Trek.
Right, there you go.
That's what they wanted. They were Trekkies and they wanted a communicator device.
Yeah.
And so they made a mobile phone.
It makes sense.
And now
we
you know, we get twitchy now if we don't know where our mobile phone is. But back then they were just nerds trying to be Captain Kirk.
Completely.
And I love that. I love the fact that my favourite literary genre has given us so much in real life and that the space program has given us so much in our everyday lives as well.
This is a broadcast signal intrusion. You're about to hear a trailer for a brand new project from the evolution of horror, an anthology audio horror drama called Deadvault.
Test, check. Test, check. Oh, sounds good here. Are we ready? Test, check. Oh, sounds good here. Are we ready?
This is the strangest thing I'll ever release. I need you to stay with me.
What's Deadvault? Nothing you're saying makes any sense.
I need you to be patient.
I don't know, there's hundreds of sound files, but some of them are just noise. But some of them sound like real people. Hi guys, it's Matt again. Welcome back to the channel.
Please. Didn't see anything. Can you please just leave me alone? I haven't done anything to you!
And don't forget to like and subscribe.
It was one of those old public information films. You don't remember that advert? No one ever does. I remember. It haunts me.
You're not going to believe what you hear, and that's okay.
99, 98, 97. You're not gonna let me go, are you?
She's gone. She's literally vanished. I think it has something to do with these files.
All I can tell you.
It was dark. I could see the lady, and every time I tried to make a sound, she put her finger to her lips and she said,
Is everything you're about to hear
What is Deadvault?
is real.
first. Oh God!
Deadvault, an Evolution of Horror audio series, written and directed by Adam Z. Robinson, produced and edited by Mike Muncer. To help make Deadvault happen, we need your support. Our Kickstarter campaign begins Sunday, 26th of October, 7 p.m. UK time. Sign up to our pre-launch now, evolutionofhorror.com/Deadvault. Now it's time to thank this week's sponsor, BFI Player. BFI Player is the place to stream exceptional independent cinema. Everything there has been handpicked by the British Film Institute. And people who listened to this podcast since the very beginning probably remember my days of recording certain podcast episodes within the grounds of the BFI. It's one of my favourite places to be. I've always loved the BFI. And the BFI Player is such a great streaming service because it really does feel like it's a mark of quality if they include something in one of their collections. Some relevant recent collections include their Michael Haneke collection. In there you've got Funny Games, The Piano Teacher, and a little video essay by me, a video essay I made this year called Michael Haneke, The Humanity Behind the Horror. They've also got a horror collection on there, and they've got some classics, including The Descent, one of my favourite films of all time. So visit player.bfi.org.uk and subscribe using voucher code EVOLUTION to start your extended free trial today. That's player.bfi.org.uk. BFI Player. See something different. UK only. Subscription required. A free trial, then £6.99 per month or £65 per year. Special offer only redeemable on BFI Player's official UK website, player.bfi.org.uk. Offer expires 23rd of November. So finally, an hour into this movie, Kev, we reach the Jupiter mission, right? We jump to 18 months later. So we are now actually in 2001.
We are now in 2001.
Right,
yes,
exactly.
We are now in 2001. Finally, an hour into the film.
And we're introduced to our two, I guess we'd call them our two main characters, right?
Yeah.
David, played by Keir Dullea, and Frank Poole, played by Gary Lockwood, right?
Indeed, yes.
What do you make, and like you say, we've talked about these incredible images where we just see them kind of jogging in their rotating, little things. What do you make of these two as our kind of characters, that we're proper characters that we're introduced to here?
They feel more like scientists than any other person pretending to be a scientist on screen up to that point. Because scientists are not cold and detached. They're just like the rest of us. But when they're working, they're using their minds. And they're logical. Yeah. And these guys are entirely logical. Yeah. They have to make decisions, very difficult decisions in some cases, when it comes to, the malfunctioning computer. What are we going to do with it?
Yeah.
We're going to have to turn it off and trust our instincts to get to wherever it is we're going. Remember that throughout this, they have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah.
They've just been put on a spaceship with 3 crew members, and they're just following orders. They've been told, you're going to go to Jupiter. We'll tell you when you get there.
Right.
So, these are guys who are, in some ways, lending ammunition to Kubrick's detractors when they talk about him being cold and distant, because these guys are sort of following orders blindly. They're being very logical, very There's a really weird scene where Frank is talking to his parents, or he's listening to a recording.
That's right,
And that's what, again, the realism of this film. They can't have real-time conversations with people back on Earth. They have to send a message and then wait for the message to get there, wait for the message to come back, and everything is done in slow motion.
Yes.
And he's listening to a thing like from his parents wishing him a happy birthday.
Yeah.
He's just lying on this sort of sunbed, isn't he? And he doesn't seem at all concerned until eventually Hal breaks the silence a little bit. He says, happy birthday, Frank.
Yeah.
And he goes, thank you, Hal. And that's it, That scene, incidentally, gives us one of the greatest running gags in the whole of cinema history.
What's that?
Frank's dad says, see you next Wednesday.
Oh my God, yeah.
That's where John Landis got it from.
Yeah.
He just thought that was such a mundane thing to say on a sort of top secret space mission, and then it becomes this fictional film within all these other films,
There you go.
And so one of the greatest running gags in cinema history is that one throwaway line, one of the few lines that otherwise nobody would have remembered
about
this film.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But I like the characters. I think, they feel like they're professionals doing a job.
They do. They absolutely feel believable as astronauts,
They do.
right? They've got that, like you say, they're cool, calm, collected.
Yep.
They're physically fit. They're very smart. And yes, they are a bit. Maybe again, there's that funny thing where they're almost a bit bland for kind of space heroes of a sci-fi film. They're not Han Solo, right?
No.
But they feel real, don't they? They absolutely feel real.
Han Solo fires his gun in the bloody landing ramp of the Millennium Falcon, causing who knows what damage if he sort of gets something wrong.
Yeah.
These guys are logical. And like I said earlier, they don't want grumpy old moody men like me on a space mission wondering about, I'm bored, I'm fed up, why are we doing this? They should have told us, because that would have wrecked everything. They needed these guys who were almost robotic to carry out this mission.
Yeah.
And you would hope that they wouldn't be fazed by whatever they found at the other end. I think that was the other sort of thinking behind it, that if we send these slightly cool guys, not emotional, whatever it is they encounter, they're not going to be bothered by it. Turns out that Bowman does encounter something and he's completely freaked by it.
Right.
But
exactly.
but then they couldn't imagine what they were going to find. But I do like them. I like them as people. I think they're believable.
Me too. Compelling performances. I mean, my favourite joke to make is that I often say Keir Dullea stars in the greatest movie ever made, Black Christmas, of course, 1974.
Yeah.
But it's great to see him.
Oh, he's going to be fists at dawn now, isn't he? Oh.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I agree. And then, of course, we are introduced to our real main character, Kev.
Yeah.
Hal.
Do you mind if I ask you a personal question?
No, not at all.
Well, forgive me for being so inquisitive. But during the past few weeks, I've wondered whether you might be having some second thoughts about the mission.
How do you mean?
Well, it's rather difficult to define. Perhaps I'm just projecting my own concern about it. I know I've never completely freed myself of the suspicion that there are some extremely odd things about this mission. I'm sure you'll agree there's some truth in what I say.
HAL 9000, heuristic algorithmic computer. That's what the HAL is, heuristic algorithm. And there was always this thing for a long while that HAL is one set of letters down from IBM.
IBM? And is that a pure coincidence?
Clark said it was not intended. It was
so
meant to
weird.
be heuristic algorithm.
Right,
but
was,
it was just a pure coincidence. But it's a lovely little layer, isn't it, to the film?
It is.
HAL is magnificent.
Oh,
played by Douglas Rain, who Kubrick had been enamoured of a film made by the National Film Board of Canada called Universe in 1960, which was all about, sort of exploring space and stuff. They were using lots of very primitive special effects to show what it would look like out there.
Yeah.
And he'd been he'd been inspired by that. And the narrator of that film, Douglas Rain.
Right.
So he'd heard his voice doing that.
Incredible voice.
He managed it to be both flat and emotionless, and at the same time more convincingly human than anybody else in the film.
Yeah.
He's terrific. And what we see of him, all we see of him to start with, is a red, all-seeing eye.
It's amazing, though, that it is just a red light. I mean,
just
that's
a red
literally all it is. And yet, the close-ups of it, there is something anthropomorphized about it, right? It's actually amazing, really. Next week, we're covering Demon Seed. And Demon Seed feels very HAL, right? The voice.
It does. Oh, yes.
But except with Demon Seed, they give it actual two sort of eyes, like almost kind of like short-circuit eyes.
That's right.
Whereas with this, it's so, again, stripped to its bare bones. It's amazing that we get such a sense of character just from that static red light, basically.
Indeed. I get the impression that the Discovery is full of cameras that HAL is monitoring the whole time. The little red light is nothing to do with HAL. It's to do with making the astronauts feel like they're talking to someone.
Right. Yeah.
It's just a point of reference to talk to. And, we do eventually see inside his brain.
Oh, my
literally
God,
see inside his brain.
Yeah.
But for the most part, all we see is this one red light, and one of the most jolting moments in the whole film is Hal starts making mistakes. They're on this mission. Let's catch up with the story. They're on this mission to Jupiter to do they don't know what, and along the way there's a recurring failure to a communication device, and they have to keep going out and doing spacewalks.
Yes.
The longer cut of the film, we'll talk more about that later, actually they go out for another spacewalk.
Oh, right. Okay.
They do, I think it's a third one, but they go out a couple of times to try to fix it.
Yeah.
And I think at first this is a genuine failure, a genuine error.
Okay.
And they begin to question whether Hal is actually up to the job, because when they get it back, they can't find anything wrong with it.
Exactly.
They begin to suspect that Hal is not functioning properly, and they have to make a decision. Do we switch him off?
Right.
Do we disconnect him? And they do this by climbing into one of the extravehicular pods, which are soundproof. And they do this lovely scene where they're saying, close the door, Hal. Can you hear us, Hal? Can you hear? And there's no answer.
Yeah.
But when they're talking, we hear them, sort of conspiratorially deciding what to do about how should we deactivate him and all the rest of it. And suddenly it cuts to the eye. And then it cuts to what the eye is seeing.
Yeah.
And it's their lips moving.
Oh, it's
behind the window.
Really sinister. Yeah.
It's really creepy because Hal is reading their lips, and he's now completely triggered for his mental breakdown that he's about to have.
Right.
And it's a really sort of jolting moment when you realise that seemingly innocuous little red thing on the wall is actually sort of spelling the doom of these astronauts.
Yes.
It's really quite creepy.
And of course, we should talk about Hal as, really this is the first time this series that I'm covering a sort of artificial intelligence kind of monster, I suppose, which we're going to go on to see so much of from this point onwards. Again, like I've mentioned, Demon Seed to all the movies we're going to get in the 80s, from Blade Runner to Terminator, the AI and the idea of AI was a thing back then, and it was appearing in lots of science fiction, of course, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Now, of course, it's a genuine, real thing / real threat, right? But I think, I think again, the portrayal of AI in this film feels quite spot on and prescient as well.
It's very prescient, isn't it? Yeah, it's It turns out that he's not actually the monster that we are led to believe, particularly if you see the sequel or read the sequel book, where it turns out that there was a conflict in his programming.
Right.
That he was told that the mission is paramount. You must complete the mission.
Yeah.
But they didn't say protect the humans doing it. And so when the humans then threaten the mission by switching him off, he just does what he's programmed to do and kills the humans or tries to kill the humans because they're getting in the way. And I was reminded of this just a few days ago before we recorded this, that there was an image of a protester in America doing the rounds.
Right.
And it was supposedly, he or she, you can't make it out because they blurred out the face, he's holding up a sign saying that they support ICE, which is a very contentious thing at the moment. And people notice that this person is standing on some marks on the floor, which when you look at it appear to be the letters AI.
Oh, wow.
And the theory is that this had been faked, this image, and that one of the prompts they'd used is something like hide evidence of AI, meaning sort of remove anything that could be AI. The AI had misinterpreted that as hide evidence in the picture that it's AI.
That's amazing.
And so this person is standing on this sort of partially obscured
AI
lettering saying AI. And that's what's happening here, that they haven't given Hal the correct prompts.
Right.
There was an old computer saying, it probably still is, GIGO, garbage in, garbage out.
Right, yeah.
When you program a computer, if you put junk data in there, what you're going to get is junk data back at you.
Right, yeah.
And that's what's happening to poor Hal. He hasn't been given the full story. His prompts weren't very good. And so he lashes out and does... He hasn't got any particular malevolence towards the astronaut. I think he actually quite likes them in a cybernetic AI sort of way. He seems to respect them. He likes the artwork, doesn't he? Is it Dave that does the artwork?
Yes,
He's really impressed by the artwork. But he's just been fed the wrong information. And he's had a nervous breakdown trying to figure it out. And, because he's had a nervous breakdown, he thought, well, I'll tell you what, I'll complete the mission. I'll get rid of these interfering humans.
Right. So it's not so much that you don't read Hal as being evil or malevolent in some way. He's just mistaken, basically.
He's misguided.
Right, misguided.
He's misguided. And not through his own fault. He's misguided because... idiot humans, you see, we haven't advanced one bit from that ape-man. We haven't figured out that we haven't told him what to do properly.
No.
We haven't given him the full details.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
What's the problem?
I think you know what the problem is just as well as I do.
What are you talking about, Hal?
This mission is too important for me to allow you to jeopardize it.
I don't know what you're talking about, Hal.
I know that you and Frank were planning to disconnect me. And I'm afraid that's something I cannot allow to happen.
Hal is painted as a villain, but when you consider what he's doing, he's not at all. He's actually... Oh, this is going to be contentious. He's actually the good guy.
Right.
Because he's trying to complete the mission.
Yeah.
He's trying to get us to make contact with aliens, you know? And he's trying to do what he was programmed to do. And unfortunately, that programming was really bad.
Absolutely.
Really bad program. So poor old Hal, I have a huge amount of sympathy for Hal. Mm-hmm. Particularly when... Okay, spoiler alert, we all know this is full of spoilers. He kills Frank.
Yeah.
Frank is outside trying to fix his AE-35 unit that's broken again, and he causes the pod to crash into him and send him spiralling out into space.
Oh God, it's horrible, that moment.
Horrible sequence, isn't it? That's where I was saying earlier, the horror of the emptiness of space.
Yeah.
Really
this is
hits
where we
home.
get kind of cosmic horror in this section, right? It is.
Spoiler for the books, Frank is out there for thousands of years.
Oh God.
And eventually he's found.
Wow.
He does actually come back later on, but a horrible idea that he's drifting off into the distance and there's no end to that distance. He's not going to wash up on some sunny shore somewhere.
Right.
He's just going to be into the cold, freezing darkness of space for the rest of eternity unless he splats into an asteroid at some point.
Yeah.
Horrifying, really scary. But Hal has killed him, and Bowman has now gone out and rescued him, and Hal is refusing to let him back into the ship. And there's this extraordinary sequence where he uses these explosive bolts on the outside of the emergency exit to the pod to blow the hatch in the Discovery and get back aboard, which is all done by having Keir Delay on a wire, filming him from below. They lowered him down as he came close, and then when the air filled back up, and the gravity kicked in, there was a guy holding the wire on a tower just out of shot, and he jumps off the tower. And so poor old Keir Delay goes whack and smacks into the bulkhead.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
And actually hurt himself.
I bet it did, yeah.
It really hurt when he did that. But the effect is extraordinary. It is one of those where you look at it, you think, how the hell are they doing that?
Yes.
Are they actually in space? I don't understand how they're doing this. It's incredible.
It's pretty scary, that stuff, when he has to fly, because he hasn't got a helmet, right? He hasn't got a helmet.
He hasn't. He's gone off in such a hurry, he forgot to take his helmet with him. So he has to go through the vacuum without a helmet. Right.
Like, he has to kind of aim himself and propel himself into the ship's airlock.
Do you find yourself holding your breath through that sequence to see if you can hold your breath as long as he can? Would I survive this?
I've always found that really scary, and countless sci-fi films and TV shows have done it since, haven't they?
They have, but this is the first of the
somebody
best.
In space without a helmet and what happens to their body,
That's right,
it's horrible, But
when he gets back in, obviously, he's a little bit angry.
Yes.
Is our Dave. Finally, he's showing a bit of human emotion, and he goes into Hal's brain and starts slowly disconnecting him in one of the most heartbreaking sequences in any science fiction film ever, where he goes in and Hal is like, I don't think you want to do this, Dave. And he's like taking bits out of him, and he slowly deteriorates. And there's this heartbreaking line, says, I think I'm going. I can feel myself going. And he's like, no, Hal, and then he reverts right back literally to childhood.
My instructor was Mr. Langley, and he taught me to sing a song. If you'd like to hear it, I can sing it for you.
Yes, I'd like to hear it, Hal. Sing it for me.
It's called Daisy. Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer.
And interestingly, depending on where you see it, you get a different song.
Oh.
In France, he sings Au clair de la lune.
Huh, that's interesting.
In Germany, it's a children's folk song, Hanschen Klein.
Right.
And in Italy, it's Giro Giro Tondo, the version of Ring a Ring of Roses.
Wow.
So he had a different song for different locations. Makes sense. But it is a heartbreaking moment where he slowly dies.
Yeah.
And then he's gone. And it's like, oh, how? You know, you murdered all those people. Do you know what? I'm crying for you.
I know. It's that idea of him just being sort of slowly lobotomized as well. It's horrible.
That's right.
It's
yeah.
really horrible.
Yeah. This great intellect, his great mind is being slowly just dismantled. And then, you know, that's when we get this video recording and we finally we get what the story is about. That they've discovered another monolith in orbit around Jupiter. We don't get a sense of this from the film, but it's meant to be immense. It's meant to be huge. And they found this and they sent the mission out to see what it is.
Yes.
And then, you know, we go into the next section of the film.
Right, exactly. So where do we start with what happens next, Kev? Because
drugs would probably help.
Yes, this short section that we've just been talking about is the closest we get to narrative.
It is, yeah.
And then I mean, this is the thing. There is this sadness and then this horrible dread that you feel when Hal dies, which is that Dave is now completely alone.
Completely alone.
Everyone is gone, including Hal.
Millions of miles from home. No way of getting back.
Right. So suddenly you've got this one astronaut floating in a tin can all by himself, right? And then we go into whatever we would call this, the sort of the vortex. It goes
Stargate.
into the void, the Stargate, exactly.
This is the bit everybody remembers. This is the bit that's been spoofed in everything. You know, the Simpsons did it, where Homer Simpson got in a vibrating chair and started seeing all the Stargate effects because of the vibration. It's an extraordinary moment. Dave is now, as you say, he's been left alone. He ventures out because he's still that inquiring mind.
Yeah.
That the aliens hadn't foreseen we were going to be. So he's going to complete the mission. He wants to know what's out there. And he takes one of the EVAs, the extravehicular activity pods.
Yeah.
And off he goes into beyond the infinite, it's called, this section. And he approaches the Stargate, the monolith that's floating. And there's a brilliant line which we don't get in this film. We learned this line in 2010, the sequel, 2010, whatever you want to pronounce it. His last message to Earth as he approaches the monolith is, my God, it's full of stars.
Right, okay.
And he gets sucked into this monolith and through the Stargate, which is a portal to the alien homeworld. Why we're seeing what we're seeing is beyond us. We can't fathom why we're seeing these extraordinary visuals. So the sort of effects that Pink Floyd would have paid a small fortune to have had on stage in the 70s, you know, completely psychedelic, tripped out weirdness, done with a process called slit scan, where they were filming lights through. It's very complicated. Go look it up. It's too complicated to explain, really. But they were using animation. They were using found footage. They were using whatever they could get. And there's one sequence which looks like it's kind of a exploding star cluster.
Yeah.
And I swear to God that turns into the head of a dolphin.
Oh.
Ever since I first saw it, I cannot see it as anything other than the head of a dolphin.
Oh, wow.
I cannot shake that image. Now that I've said it, you'll go watch it again, you'll think, oh, bloody hell, Lyons, I'm never going to not see that as the head of a dolphin, am I?
That's really funny.
But it's just these remarkable sequences, and it's intercut. While we're sitting there being completely bamboozled by this imagery, we keep getting these flash cuts to close-ups of Dave in a state of absolute existential panic.
Yeah.
He has no idea what's happening to him.
Those moments are scary. They feel very The Shining-esque to me.
They do, don't they? Yeah. He's been exposed to this incredible experience which he hasn't got. Human beings haven't got the capacity, even in 2001, the far distant 2001 as it was then, they didn't have the capacity to understand what was happening to him. And it's horrifying. It's really, really scary. In fact, there was a story going around at one point that at some point kids started, we'll talk again about this, kids started taking drugs and going to watch it because it was just psychedelic as hell. And apparently in San Francisco, of course it was San Francisco, where else would this happen? Apparently someone was seen fleeing the cinema screaming, it's God during the Stargate sequence. So
amazing.
I mean, it's one of those moments that's very hard to put into words. It's almost sort of transcendental
It is.
It's
completely.
I don't know why he sees all those images. I really don't. And it's one of the great mysteries of the film, why he's seeing this stuff. Is it just a byproduct of the travelling to God knows where? Who knows? Who knows? I don't want to know, in a way. That's the big mystery.
Yeah, and it's like the fabric of the universe is folding in on itself or something.
That's
because
right.
There is maybe a suggestion, we'll get to it at the end, that maybe he's travelled through time as well, like a sort of wormhole or something. I don't know.
Time stops working, in a way, where he goes. But but yeah, it is this portal to possibly even another dimension.
Right, yeah.
Not even our universe, but it's the thing. If you watch enough Brian Cox documentaries, you'll get a flavour of just how bizarre the universe is. Just how completely weird it is. And this captures it on film more than anything else. This idea that we're going to go into space and we ain't going to have the slightest idea what's going on out there. No. Not the faintest idea.
No, absolutely.
There's going to be all sorts of sights to see and things to experience, and we don't have the mental capacity to understand it.
Completely, yeah.
Which is probably why we should stay here for a little while.
I think
so. And not go out there just yet, because we're not ready for it.
I'm fine where I am for now. That's absolutely fine. But yeah, it is. Again, it's like an early example of pure cosmic horror, isn't it? That idea
it is, isn't it?
This is going to make your mind pop and melt.
That's right.
Because you're dealing with something far bigger and greater than anything our brains can comprehend, right?
We cannot work this out. I mean, as viewers, we can't work this out. Dave Bowman can't work this out. No one can work out what's happening. Only the aliens can understand it, and we never see them.
Right. Yeah.
We never see them, and they don't seem inclined to explain to us what's going on. So they are genuinely alien.
And again, we've got that astonishing music accompanying this section.
It's Ligeti again, isn't it? With all the screeching and howling and the voices and all the rest of it. It's just
pure horror. That's like gothic horror, isn't it? It's pure
absolutely.
Horror. Yeah.
It's a pure horror. Go and see that on the IMAX.
Yeah.
So you get it in 6-channel surround or whatever the sound, and this image that's filling up your entire field of view, and it is overwhelming.
It is.
You do sort of feel you're sort of burying yourself in the seat just to have some contact with the real world, because it's just so takes you out of it. It's extraordinary.
And it's a good kind of 10, 11 minutes of this.
Yeah.
Until we get our sort of coda, I suppose, right?
Yes.
What happens here at the end, Kev, and how do you interpret it into what happens here?
Okay, well, my interpretation. He arrives in a place where time doesn't work the way it does here. And interestingly, Lloyd Rose had interviewed Kubrick in 1987 for the Washington Post. It was at the time that he was doing doing Full Metal Jacket.
Right.
And they talked about the gap between The Shining and Full Metal Jacket. And Kubrick, with a bit of a smile on his face apparently, said, "Has it been 7 years? I can never remember the years. I don't remember dates." I don't think time meant very much to Stanley Kubrick. I think it was just like, yeah. So I never remember the years. I don't remember dates.
Yeah.
And, sort of Bowman doesn't remember the years it's taken to travel, because he's an old man when he arrives, and he ages rapidly when he gets there.
Yes.
And quite what's going on, again, it's one of the great mysteries of this. The interesting thing is that you can hear the aliens.
Yeah.
You can hear these noisy like voices, which we can't understand. And I've always took that to be alien scientists discussing Bowman.
Right.
That he's like a lab rat.
Yeah.
They're observing him.
Yeah.
And one of the things I found, which was kind of interesting when I went to the archive, is he did actually try to make aliens.
Oh, right.
He did. There was always an intention to show them. He had people dressed in reflective costumes that would glow when he hit them with lights, but he could never get it to look right. So he made the absolutely genius decision, I just won't show them.
No, that's good.
We will never know who they are.
I mean, you don't even necessarily, I think, unless you've seen the film and read up on it as much as you have, Kev, you wouldn't necessarily even know this was a film about aliens, that there were aliens in this film.
No.
Yeah.
The hominids have no idea that they're aliens, just that this weird thing appears. We don't know that. We assume there is. We assume there's life in the universe because we found traces of them.
Yeah.
And in fact, they do. I think Hayward Floyd does say something along the lines of, this is the first evidence of life elsewhere.
Yeah.
But they don't say what they're expecting to find.
Yeah.
They're just being inquisitive. Let's go out there and find it. And what poor old Dave finds is a race of aliens even colder and more distant than he is.
Right, exactly.
They're completely detached. We're just lab rats to them.
Yeah.
And then he ages.
Yeah.
There's a beautiful sequence of these sort of overlapping scenes where Bowman is eating dinner and he looks up and he's already aged, and he looks up and he sees an older version of himself.
Yeah.
No, that's right. No, he's in the space helmet, isn't he? He's got the crinkly eyes.
That's right.
He sees himself eating the dinner and he's older. And then the older guy sees the astronaut guy, and then the astronaut guy disappears.
Yeah.
And then dinner-eating guy turns round and there's a really ancient version in the bed. Yeah. And it's kind of this sort of overlapping kind of almost related to the jump cut.
Right, exactly.
Let's go through this whole man's life in a couple of sequences that just dissolve one into the other.
Yeah.
And then we get the most enigmatic ending for any science fiction film ever, where Bowman is completely aged, close to death, lying in bed, and he sits up, looking at something, and what we see is the monolith at the end of the bed. And the monolith turns him into a fetus, an unborn child, which then returns to Earth orbit.
Yeah.
Now, in the novel, brilliant, you get this thing, the Star Child, it's called.
Right.
And I think it's the very last line saying he doesn't know what he would do next, but he would think of something. And the first thing he actually does is detonates all of those nuclear platforms around the Earth.
Oh, wow.
So that they're not a threat anymore.
Right.
In the film, he just turns to look at the camera, and soppy old Kev blubs like a baby when he does that. I just find that intensely moving. That Star Child is so incredible. My interpretation of it, everybody's mileage may vary, is this is a warning from the aliens. This is how we see you. You're not even born compared to us.
Right.
You are still in the dawn of man.
Yeah.
You may think you're clever because you've got your spaceships and your nuclear bombs and all the rest of it. To us, you're still those stupid hominids who've gone down an evolutionary dead end.
Right.
And that, I think, is what the ending means. I think that's what... in the sequel, we find out that they've the aliens have returned. And is it Io? It's one of the moons of Jupiter. They found life on Io. And they plant a monolith there which broadcasts a message saying all these worlds are yours except for Io, do not come here. So it kind of knows that man is not to be trusted, and it's trying again with this sort of manipulating life.
Yes.
And so I think it's what he did. I always see the Star Child as a kind of benevolent warning.
Yeah, it's interesting though, isn't it? Because the music, we're back to that kind of iconic theme from the beginning of the film, aren't we?
Yeah.
There's something that almost feels uplifting and triumphant about it, whilst also feeling, like you said, almost like it's kind of almost showing how small and insignificant and pointless we are in the universe as well.
But in a way, that's kind of beautiful.
Right, yeah.
Because it's like, Clarke had written this novel called Childhood's End.
Right, yeah.
And he started with Childhood's Beginning. We still haven't been born yet. We're so primitive compared to these aliens who can create monoliths that can do anything, and stargates that can take you to God knows where. And we're still sort of pissing about with nuclear weapons.
Yes.
We haven't changed at all, really. We haven't, and hence the jump cut. The jump cut is sort of reinforcing the fact that we haven't changed one bit.
That's right.
We just got more efficient at killing each other.
That's right. There's something, again, ending with the music that we begin with, there's something very circular about this, right? That nothing has changed here since the dawn of man, essentially, right?
No,
even though we've travelled to the far reaches of the universe, we've created nuclear weapons, we've created artificial intelligence, we are back to being helpless fetuses, essentially.
Yeah, right? we are basically what Desmond Morris would call the following year with his book Naked Apes.
Right, yeah.
That we're no better than we were when they first encountered us. We're just a little bit more resourceful, perhaps.
Yeah.
But, in terms of our evolution, we've got a hell of a long way to go.
Right.
And I like it. I like the fact that these aliens are still kind of being benevolent in a way.
Yeah.
They're sending this warning, don't come and mess with us because you're not ready for us yet.
Yeah.
But the fact that this is a sort of a viable fetus means that we will be born one day.
Right.
So there is hope for us. We will eventually become the species that they always hoped we would.
God, well, there we go. What a bold movie.
Isn't it?
I want to talk about the reaction to this film, the commercial and critical reaction, its legacy on cinema. But first of all, we're going to head over to this week's Wild About Horror because, of course, Freudian cinephile Mary Wild has a lot of thoughts to express on Stanley Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey.
Hey Mike, Mary Wild here, with some thoughts on Stanley Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey, often remembered for its elegance, the spinning spacecraft set to Strauss, the hypnotic choreography of machines in orbit. But beneath that beauty lies something terrifying, an encounter with technology that reveals the uncanny strangeness of human evolution. Kubrick invites us to witness humanity's origins and ultimate destiny, and what he shows us is a mix of progress and alienation. The film's horror is metaphysical, an existential dread that seeps through every frame. We begin with primitive man, an ape discovering a bone, which becomes the first tool and the first weapon. This moment of evolutionary breakthrough is also a regression. Freud might call it the return of the repressed. Civilization, after all, is built upon repressed violence, the sublimation of instinct into progress. Kubrick's famous match cut from the bone tossed into the air to satellite in orbit exposes that progress as circular. The bone and the spacecraft are the same object, one primitive, the other refined, both instruments of domination. Technology emerges as the double of the human psyche, the externalization of our death drive. Every invention designed to preserve life also advances the means of destruction. On the surface, the narrative implies that machines will one day turn against us, but upon deeper reflection, the horror is that they already express the most repressed aspects of ourselves. Enter HAL 9000. HAL is calm, rational, and courteous, the perfect embodiment of Enlightenment reason. But when he malfunctions, the mask slips. The voice slows, the breathing becomes labored, and it seems like the machine feels fear. HAL's breakdown mirrors the human neurosis he was designed to transcend. In psychoanalytic terms, HAL occupies the position of the superego, the cold, regulating authority that watches, judges, and demands perfection. He calls himself foolproof and incapable of error, echoing the fantasy of infallible paternal power. But like all superegos, he's driven by anxiety. When David and Frank plan to disconnect him, HAL's murderous panic erupts. The paternal function collapses and reason mutates into psychosis. Kubrick's use of HAL's voice, soothing yet menacing, captures the uncanny quality Freud described, something both familiar and alien. HAL speaks our language, but without affect. He's an echo of our consciousness stripped of empathy. His calm is the calm of repression. His violence is the return of what repression cannot contain. HAL goes rogue, but HAL is us. Our logical structures, our surveillance systems, our perfectionist drives, all have been externalized and mechanized. HAL's red eye, perpetually open, evokes the watchman Freud described, guarding the threshold between consciousness and the unconscious. It never blinks, it sees everything, it knows too much. And yet, the film's most enigmatic creation, the monolith, complicates things further. The monolith appears as a black slab, smooth and silent, without inscription. It provokes transformation each time it arrives, from ape to man, from man to star child. The monolith is the object of the real, that which cannot be symbolized or understood. It's unspeakably alien, beyond the limits of reason. If hell represents the symbolic order, the realm of language, logic, and law, then the monolith belongs to the real. It resists explanation, standing as a cosmic unconscious. In the presence of the monolith, human subjects experience trauma and awe simultaneously. It's both terrifying and ecstatic, annihilating and transcendent. Kubrick stages the monolith's silence as a confrontation with the limits of knowledge. Science, the Enlightenment's proudest offspring, reaches a point where it can no longer speak. David Bowman's final journey through the Stargate, a hallucinatory sequence of light, time, and rebirth, moves into the pre-symbolic space. The fetus, the star child, gazes back at Earth. In Lacanian terms, the transformation into the star child is an encounter with jouissance, a condition of excess that breaches the limits of the ego, resulting in suffering. The more we seek mastery, the more we dissolve into what cannot be mastered. The Enlightenment promise that reason and science will deliver us from darkness is inverted. Kubrick's cosmic horror lies in this paradox. Technology extends human life, but it also magnifies the death drive. Hal's precision, the monolith's perfection, the sterile serenity of Kubrick's spacecraft, all are monuments to a civilization estranged from its own desires. By the film's end, the silence of space is no longer peaceful. It's the silence of a world where meaning has broken down. The machines continue their orbit, elegant and indifferent, while the human subject has transcended, or perhaps disintegrated, into pure image. Kubrick shows us that the central monstrosity is our insistence that technology will save us. Hal and the monolith are two sides of the same coin, the dream of perfect control and the abyss of total unknowability. Between them lies the fragile human being, caught in the feedback loop of its own making, terrified by the very intelligence it has birthed. We are faced with the unbearable light of reason, the blinding luminosity of a mind that can no longer bear its own reflection. And today, Hal's legacy echoes in our creations, the algorithms and artificial intelligences that speak with our voices, think in our patterns, and learn our desires. Like Hal, they embody our longing for perfection and our terror for self-recognition. The machine as mirror, reflecting our most disciplined logic and our deepest unconscious fears. Until next time.
A big thank you to the brilliant Mary Wild. Always love hearing her takes on movies. And if you want to hear more from Mary, don't forget you can sign up to her Patreon, patreon.com/Mary Wild. Kev, now that we've been through the film, I want to talk a little bit about the aftermath, about this film's reaction and its legacy. Because it's mad. It's mad to me that this giant art house film, it's an experimental art house film in a sense, right? How this was received commercially and critically. Tell me a little bit about that.
It was very mixed, as it is today. When a friend of mine from my day job, we took her two teenage sons to see it a while ago at the IMAX, and the older one, when it finished, he just turned to me and said, "What the was that all about?" And and he could not get his head around it. And I totally get that. Everybody, I showed it to teenagers, to grumpy old men like me and to everybody in between. And I would say a good 80% of people just like, nope.
I totally get
they
it
kind
too.
of recoil from it. And I get that.
Mm-hmm.
I get that. And at the time, I think the critics felt the same way.
Yeah.
Some people loved it. Some people were so in tune to it that they really loved it. Most of them just scratching their heads.
Yeah.
You know, what the hell? In fact, that Keir Delay claimed that around 250 people walked out of the premiere while the film was still going.
Wow.
And Rock Hudson, of all people,
Oh, we were just talking about him last week on Seconds. There you go.
Well, there you go. Well, here he is, apparently reported to have left a Los Angeles screening muttering, "What is this bullshit? Can someone tell me what the hell it's about?"
Amazing. I
It's
love
incredible.
That. I love
So, yeah,
that.
I mean, and you still hear this a lot today.
Yeah.
This isn't us sort of like, you know, looking back at 1960s audiences and thinking, oh, they were so unsophisticated in the late 60s, weren't they? Blah, 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 blah. They're still doing it now.
Oh, totally.
It still divides people. It is a very difficult film. It's not, in any sense, a mainstream film.
It's not.
It wasn't then, it isn't now. It's an art film.
It is, completely. Yeah.
It's a very expensive art film made by a mainstream Hollywood studio who probably didn't realise that they were funding an art film.
Right.
You know, and I
absolutely.
think... And, you know, it could have been even more baffling because when they showed the premiere, it was 17 minutes longer.
Oh, my God.
17 minutes more. And, you know, Kubrick had to think about it and thought, no, OK, we can whittle this down a little bit. We can take out one of the spacewalks, do a few other things. And that footage was lost for many years.
Oh, right.
And it was a matter of complete heartbreak until someone had a root around in a Kansas salt mine where they were storing films because salt mines are really good places to store film.
Right.
And they found the 17 minutes.
Wow.
And we've still not seen it. We've still not seen it. And
how did it end up in Kansas? What the hell? That's
one of
so
those great
weird.
mysteries. How do these things ever end up anywhere?
Yeah.
You know, it's like how
went
did
through a space wormhole, maybe, or something.
They fell through a wormhole and ended up in that strange alien place of Kansas. Yeah,
exactly.
But you know, how did we get Metropolis, a great German film, back from South America? Well, probably because Germans went there. But
yes,
you know, it's like films will turn up in the oddest of places.
Yeah.
There's a part of me is crying out to see these 17 minutes.
Right. Yeah.
And there's another part of me thinks what we've got is perfect.
Yeah.
I think it's the best film ever made. How can they improve on this? Will the extra 17... Was he right to take that out?
He probably was, knowing Stanley Kubrick.
If Stanley Kubrick said we don't need it, I don't necessarily need to see it. I'd like to see it as an extra, maybe. Don't put it back in the film.
Well, it's not as if Kubrick was worried about it being too long. I mean, it's like it's pretty long as it is, you know. And
pretty long.
Having said that, it's still shorter than most movies we get today, and goes
absolutely.
and ventures from the dawn of man all the way to the ends of the universe and back.
Exactly.
You know? So, yeah.
And I sometimes get a little bit annoyed when I say I don't like a certain film because it's a bit long and it's a bit slow. They go, "Oh, you just don't like slow films, do you?" My favourite film is the slowest film ever made.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
It takes forever to get anywhere, and it's beautiful. It's the journey, not the destination. With 2001, you know.
Yes, exactly.
But it was. People found it very difficult, and audiences were a little bit resistant to it when it opened. When word of mouth was getting round that this is a difficult film. But then something extraordinary happened. The kids got word about it, about the Stargate sequence, and they were thinking, "Wow, man, I shall take my chemical or plant of choice.
Well, this is it,
and I will go along, and I will." And there was all these stories of kids lying flat on the floor under the bottom of the screen during the Stargate sequence, absolutely off their gourd on whatever they were taking, and just tripping. And so much so that they reissued the film with a new poster with the words "The Ultimate Trip."
Right. Oh, wow.
On it. So referring not only to our trip from, you know, primitiveness to slightly less primitiveness, but also the fact that this was a drug movie, man.
Incredible.
You know, sort of come and drop your acid and just blow your mind. It's going to be and you know, it's like I only ever did acid the once, and I found God in a wardrobe, which was really, really odd for someone who's never believed in it. And I do sometimes think, you know, probably not right for me to be doing it again, certainly at my age, but if I was going to do it, I would do it to the Stargate sequence.
Got to, right? You've got to.
I would time it so that I was completely off my nut and all these colours were coming at me and all these sounds, and I would either be terrified that person
I
screaming.
think I would end up
God.
having a freak out. And
I think it would probably do me more harm than good, to be honest. It would damage my relationship with the film, so it's not a good idea. But if you're feeling young and adventurous, well, I would not condone use of drugs. Just say no, kids. But if you are going to do it, 2001 is the perfect accompaniment for that. After that, it became a cult thing.
Of course. Because
kids were going back time and time again just to sort of, have this experience. And over time, critical attitudes softened, like they do with all Kubrick's films.
Yeah, they do, exactly.
The Clockwork Orange was hated when it first came out. Now it's regarded as a masterpiece.
The Shining was nominated for Golden Raspberries for worst movie. Now it's one of the greatest horror films ever made. Yeah.
Eyes Wide Shut, like you said, it gets better with every viewing. Time is always kind to Kubrick, even though he didn't understand time and didn't recognise it. Time has actually been a good ally to him. And so now it is regarded as one of as the key achievements in science fiction cinema.
Yeah.
Everybody that makes a serious science fiction film, be it Interstellar, be it Gravity, be it The Martian, they're all looking at 2001.
Totally. It's the sci-fi film against which every other sci-fi film is measured.
Everything is measured. Yeah, absolutely. So far, they haven't quite got there.
No.
Love Gravity, love The Martian, love Interstellar. They're getting close. Mm-hmm. But there was something about 2001. Maybe it was the time it was made. I don't know.
And it sort of epitomises the kind of the thinking man sci-fi, doesn't it? People would say, are you more of a 2001 guy or more of a Star Wars kind of a guy?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there is a part of one of the reasons I think I get a little bit irate about Star Wars is that 2001 has showed us what we could do in science fiction cinema, and people did pick up the gauntlet. We did have things like Solaris from Russia, which is very lazily described as the Russian 2001. It's not. It's the Russian Solaris, but it's in the same ballpark. Mm-hmm. It's doing serious, grown-up science fiction. Silent Running. Now, I have a lot of issues with Silent Running, but it is trying to be grown-up science fiction.
Yeah.
Even Logan's Run. Yeah. To an extent, which was, box office disaster and sort of fairly hilarious at times, but at least it was trying to be serious.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then Star Wars comes along and says, now we'll just do a pantomime.
Completely.
Hang on. No, I can hear it. It's another Wicker Man being built to put me in.
I'm with you.
Dissing Star Wars. I'm not a big fan of Star Wars, but...
Well, to be honest, Kevin, again, I don't want to be burned at the stake for saying this, but I think it barely counts as sci-fi, right? I mean, I think Star Wars is a kind of fantasy Western adventure. Yeah. It's not actually interested in the science fiction, is it? It's
on my website, EOFFTV, I did for many years categorise it as fantasy.
Yeah.
Until I got so many people getting really irate with me saying, no, it's science fiction. It really isn't. It's like, just because you've got a spaceship in it doesn't make it science fiction any more than having a horse in it makes it a Western.
Right, exactly.
It's a fantasy. And as a fantasy, it works perfectly fine. In fact, it kind of falls apart with the prequels when they try to do science fiction.
Yeah.
That's what nobody wanted that. They wanted high adventure and some cowboys and Indians with ray guns. That's what they were going to see. It was a fantasy.
Yeah. Whereas this is as sci-fi gets.
This is hard science fiction.
Yeah,
this is the kind of science fiction I was reading at the time. This was, Clarke in print. It was Heinlein. It was Asimov. It was Silverberg and all the rest of those great science fiction writers. This is what they were writing.
Yeah, completely.
And that's why I loved it. That's why I fell in love with it, because I finally saw a film that could come close to matching what was in my head when I was reading those books.
Yeah. And I think, because it's Kubrick, because there was so much time and care and effort put into every frame of this movie, it holds up remarkably well, doesn't it? I don't think it's ever going to age in a way, this movie.
It always heartens me that, even though I take people to see it who don't like it, that every time I did used to go to a screening of it, it was a packed house.
Yeah, always.
People are still going to see this film. And there are younger people who are finding it for the first time and feeling the same way that you and I did at the age of 17.
Completely, yeah.
It's timeless. When I first saw it, you first saw it, it was already a decade old.
Yeah.
And, so the distance between 1968 and 1977 or so, when I first saw it, culturally was a chasm.
Yeah.
We'd gone from Woodstock to punk in that time. It was a chasm. And so it was a huge, huge difference. And it still resonated with me, and it still resonates with young people today, even after this, even greater chasm of time.
Yeah.
Because it is just, there's nothing in it that's set in the current modern world.
Right. Exactly.
You could rename it 3001, which is actually one of the sequel novels. You could rename it that and it would still work because, it would be then a vision of the future again.
Well, speaking of, maybe we should finish. I just want to briefly ask you, Kev, on your thoughts on the sequel. 2010. You have mentioned it a couple of times. We didn't get this until 1984, right? The movie 2010,
right.
The year we make contact. I imagine.
Although it never actually says that on screen.
Oh, interesting.
It's only 2010. It never says the year.
That's one of these tricky title card things again.
One of those
Kev.
tricky title card things, absolutely. But I think there was a long gap because people were intimidated. How the hell do you follow that?
Yeah.
You can imagine a young Steven Spielberg looking at it and thinking, I wouldn't mind doing a sequel to that. But of course, he was a young Steven Spielberg. He didn't have the clout at that point.
No.
And by the time he did have the clout, he made Close Encounters, which was his kind of, equivalent to 2001.
Yeah.
No, 2010, 2010, whatever you want to call it, I think it has one big problem. It's a sequel to 2001.
Oh, I know. I mean, I've never seen it because I've sort of never wanted to see it.
But the interesting thing, it's not a bad science fiction film.
Right, okay, yeah.
It's actually quite a good science fiction film, really. It's just, it's the sequel to the greatest film ever made.
Yeah.
So no matter what it did, I was already pre-programmed to hate it.
Right, yeah.
I wasn't a big fan of the sequel novels that Clarke wrote. And when I went to it, I thought, well, all right, if you strip away the fact that 2001 was the greatest film ever made, this is actually a really good science fiction film.
Okay, yeah.
It's got some really typical Clarkian huge ideas. Spoiler for this film as well. Part of the story is about the creation of a new sun within our solar system by the aliens. So it's a big thing, big ideas. And I think time has been fairly kind to it. I think you have to put yourself in that position and understand it's not Kubrick, it's Peter Hyams, who is a good, solid director, but he wasn't Kubrick.
Right.
And it's a good science fiction film, but it's not a masterpiece. But it is instructive because we do find out why Hal behaves the way he did.
Yeah.
We do find out about that last message from Bowman, my God, it's full of stars. It's actually how 2010 starts. There's silence, we hear, my God, it's full of stars, and then also Sprach Zarathustra starts. So it's kind of linking to the film. But there's some very good stuff in it. Just when you watch it, just try to sort of keep 2001 at a slight distance. It's very difficult because we've got Bowman and the Star Child back, so it's kind of difficult to differentiate it. But
it's tricky because I also sort of don't want too much explained to me as well. I kind of like the open.
I like the mystery of it. That's the bit that lets it down, is that they try and don't do a very good job of it. And this is down to Clarke as much as Hyams, that they try to explain what happened to Bowman.
Right.
I don't want to know what happened to Bowman.
No.
He becomes the Star Child. That'll do. That's good. He's become this warning to mankind. That's enough. The story ends.
Yes.
Excellent. And I can spend the rest of my life worrying about what that really means.
Exactly.
I've always had a problem when people try to spell things out to me.
Yeah.
I always like a bit of mystery.
Yeah, me too.
It's like I like not knowing things because you have to work for it.
Agreed.
You have to interpret it. You have to, I think I've said this, and I'm sure I said this in a podcast recently. It's probably one of our Hamill ones. They're all merging into one, Mike. They're all merging into one big Dayglow Stargate of a podcast. But the idea of not being an expert in something, because I always want to know something new.
Totally, yeah.
And 2001's like that. I can sit and watch 2001, and every time I watch it, I can think of something else.
God, yeah. Yeah,
and there's no other film that does that to me.
I think that's it, isn't it? It's the movie it's the gift that keeps on giving, that film. You will always see something new in it every single time you watch it, which is why people to this day are still paying to go see it in the cinema
if you watch it and you don't like it, trust me, give it another go.
Yeah.
Do it for me.
Do it for Kev. Exactly.
Do it for your Uncle Kev. Come on, give it another go. Just go and let it wash over you and be transported by it. Because I guarantee you will be transported by it.
Well, there you go, Kev. We managed to talk about this film in its entirety in 2 hours and 10 minutes. We beat the runtime of the movie. I'm pretty impressed with us there.
I did do another podcast one time. I think I told you this about 2001, and I had the film running in the background. Even with the intermission, I was still talking and the film had finished. So you're lucky to get it down to this much.
There you go. I'm impressed with us. Good work. I love it. Well, Kev, thank you. It's been, as always, such a pleasure to discuss this movie with you.
Oh, no, the pleasure is all mine with this one. I will talk about this film. To be honest, you're getting ready to say goodbye. I'm going to start again. I've got loads more to say. So.
Yeah, exactly. We need it. There'll be deleted scenes, the deleted...
Exactly, yeah.
But Kev, let people know, and they can tune into Hammer Time every week to hear
Hammer Time is the main thing to come and find me at.
Absolutely. Yeah. And they can find you on social medias and everything, right?
EOFFTV usually is my handle on these things. Come and say hello. I've been getting a lot of people turning up, particularly on Instagram, because of the Hammer Time thing. And I have to say, I'm an old man. I really don't understand Instagram. I can get my head around Facebook and Twitter, but so come along. If I don't immediately respond, please don't be offended. It's just I can understand 2001 sort of, but I can't understand Instagram. So
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah. That's a whole nother level of cosmic
That's
horror.
A whole thing. Yeah, that's a whole other thing.
Amazing. Kev, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Mike.
And that's it for this week. Thank you all so much for listening. One more time, a massive thank you to my brilliant guest, Kevin Lyons. Oh my God, what an epic movie. What an epic discussion. I would love to hear your thoughts. Do you agree with Kevin that this is one of the greatest movies ever made? Or do you think it's a bit overrated? I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, evolutionofhorror@gmail.com. And you can also find us on the socials. Evolution of Horror is on Facebook and Instagram. I, Mike Muncer, am on Instagram and Blue Sky. You can also discuss this week's episode with fellow listeners on the Evolution of Horror Discord or the Evolution of Horror discussion group on Facebook. If you want to receive ad-free versions of this podcast and receive weekly bonus episodes, sign up to our Patreon, patreon.com/evolution of horror. This week on Patreon, we are revealing the top half of our top 50 horror movies of the 21st century so far. That was voted for by hundreds of patrons. We are counting down the results this week in the run-up to Halloween. We'll be revealing numbers 25 through to 1. Cannot wait for that. Patreon.com/evolution of horror. This podcast is part of the EOH network. You can also tune in to Kevin Lyons every week on our new podcast, Hammer Time. That's where he and Becky Dark are going through every single Hammer film in chronological order. Or, if you are this way inclined, you could check out Carry On Up the podcast with me and Susan Kalman, in which Susan and I are discussing every single Carry On movie in the iconic British comedy franchise. There's a bit of something for everyone here at the EOH network. There you go. So next week, it's going to be a really fun one. Oh, we are really in a bit of a golden era right now because we are going from banger to banger. Next week, I'm going to be joined by the legend that is Alexandra Helen Nicholas, and we are going to be discussing two interesting kind of feminist sci-fi horror films from the 1970s. The Stepford Wives from 1975 and Demon Seed from 1977. Join us next week for all of this and more on the Evolution of Horror.
Daisy, Daisy, give me your answer, do.